Chapter 3960. At that moment, Lien was carrying 3 little puppies that were running around in the courtyard into the house. Suddenly, she saw the mechanical bird that appeared on the windowsill. Her eyes flickered slightly, and she poked the bird lightly with her finger. The bird's beak opened and closed, and Yin Piaomiao's voice emerged from within. "Student Xiao, I hope you can return to school immediately. I have an extremely important matter to discuss with you." Lien knitted his brows as he gazed over quietly. The mechanical bird completed its task and flew out from the windowsill. It flapped its 2 wooden wings and flew further and further away in the twilight. Eventually, it turned into a small black dot and disappeared into the horizon. Although Yin Piaomiao was not very reliable, he would not send a mechanical bird to find the couple over some trivial matters. This meant that Dean Yin indeed had something important to discuss with his wife. But Lien pinched the green vine in his sleeve and entered Paradise Planet. He left the 3 little puppies behind and circled around the stool where he disappeared, barking angrily. "Crown Prince!" Chio and Little Water Droplet hopped over in a very flattering manner, tugging at his clothes and calling out repeatedly, "Crown Prince." Lien's mouth twitched, and he bent down to pick up the 2 little ones from the ground. "Where are they?" Little Two and the Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal brought everyone to Peak Planet to mine. Lien. "Haha, Rotten Peach Blossom is very proactive." "Crown Prince, why did you come in?" "It's nothing." Lien cast a glance into the distance before lowering his eyes after testing it out. "We can't enter the main planet." Yes, we can't enter the main planet," Little Water Child said in a childish voice. "Before Master went in, she told us that she would need a certain amount of time inside." Yes, the fastest would be 3 days. Lien furrowed his brows and pondered. He then left Paradise Planet. When the 3 puppies saw him suddenly appear, they were filled with righteous indignation and pounced on him, biting his robe and barking in protest. "Don't make a fuss." Lien pressed the space between his brows as he carried those 3 little ones to the table and patted their heads. There was something fishy about this. Yin Piaomiao wouldn't send them a message for no reason. Huifeng. A dark figure suddenly appeared at the window and bared his white teeth at the Crown Prince. "Master, did you forget again? Huifeng was personally ordered by you to be sent to Huiping Village to open a mine. Otherwise, she would have returned to the capital with 3rd young Master Fu. Poor Huifeng. He didn't know how he'd offended his master again." Xiao Yi secretly shed a tear of sympathy for him from the bottom of his heart. But that was it. His Highness. It seemed like Huifeng had offended him. He ordered him to lead a group of brats from the Purple Forest Guard to open that holy meridian in Huiping Village. But in order to ensure their safety, he had already ordered Venerable Immortal Jinshang, Zhaosheng, and Liang Yi to assist them. With Venerable Immortal Jinshang, a peak Venerable Immortal, protecting Huifeng and the others, there shouldn't be any major problems. Lien thought for a moment before saying to Xiao Yi, "Have the people from the Night Pavilion go to the Imperial Academy's Yin Piaomiao to scout for information. I don't know what matter requires the Crown Princess to personally handle." "Yes." Xiao Ye's expression was solemn as he responded, and immediately left to handle the matter. Lien frowned slightly, and a trace of irritation inexplicably rose in her heart. Chapter 3961. Couldn't Yin Piaomiao say a few more words? What a troublemaker. Lien frowned. His hand was touched by the 3 little things, and he came back to his senses. He casually took some meat and tore it to feed them. He muttered, "I wonder if Jojo is doing well." "Your Highness." Tong appeared at the door. Lien nodded. "Is there any news?" A hint of hesitation appeared on Tong's face. "If you have something to say, just say it." "Yes." Tong nodded and then said, "The 2nd day after Prince Chun returned to Tsang Province, he went to the Imperial Mausoleum on Lonely Mountain and hasn't left the mountain since." "Imperial Mausoleum?" Lien was shocked. "Who is it?" "Prince Chen's mother passed away." Lien was startled. "Why so suddenly?" "Yes." This subordinate found out that Prince Chun received the news of his mother's burial the 2nd day after he returned, and he rushed to Lonely Mountain on the same day. "What else did you find out?" Emollien's expression changed slightly. This brat, don't let anything happen to him, Xiao Xiao is worried. Our men are moving very carefully in the Phoenix Monarch City. Emperor Tsong has spies all over the world, and they will be caught by him if they aren't careful. Tong lowered his head. That's all we found for now. It's said that Prince Chen cried for 3 days and nights in Lonely Mountain, and then fainted. Emollien! Exclamation point. Have our men contact him, and see if there's anything we can help with. Yes. Tong didn't say anything, and only lowered his eyes. In the end, the men they sent to Phoenix Emperor City were spies of the enemy kingdom. Now that His Highness the Crown Prince was willing to sacrifice these men to help Prince Chen, it was clear that they were close. The situation on Duan Yu's side definitely wouldn't be as easy as his. As soon as he returned to the capital, his father gave him everything he should, despite his arrogance. He even handed over the most secretive hidden emperor guard of the Yu court guards to him, without hesitation. Other than that annoying old lady, there was basically nothing else in the harem for him to worry about. Duan Yu was different. His unreliable father would not dote on his son, as much as the divine prefecture emperor did. The emperor of Tsong province had so many sons and daughters, so why must he choose Duan Yu? Moreover, there were so many women in the harem, and so many disputes. Duan Yu's mother's death was definitely not simple. Do your best to help him. Give him all your connections and money. Emollien ordered coldly. Yes. Tong Zheng was about to leave. However, he heard his master say coldly, don't let anything happen to him. Yes. Emollien had been sitting in her room until nightfall, when she was awakened by a soft knock on the door. Xiao Zhongbang stood at the door and said, Xiaoma, come out and eat. What are you doing cooped up in the house? Emollien relaxed and stood up to greet him. Father, Jojo said that he's going to go into seclusion to concoct some kind of pill. Xiao Zhongbang scratched his head and said with a smile, if you don't have anything to do, then don't cooped up in your room. Come out and chat with everyone. Okay. Emollien nodded with a smile. Oh right, you have to go to court early in the morning tomorrow, right? Your mother said she's going to make breakfast for you. Remember to go after eating. Although Changle Avenue wasn't far from the palace, it wasn't as close as the Eastern Palace. It would take half an hour to get there. Since the Crown Prince was staying here, he had to leave a bit earlier. Okay. Prince Emo agreed with a smile. Xiao Zhongbang nodded with a chuckle. Chapter 3962. Inside the lush forest behind the Royal Academy's mountain, everyone silently stood in front of the ice crystal coffin, not speaking for a long time. The atmosphere appeared very oppressive. Eldest brother, please reconsider. Yin Piaomiao lowered her gaze and quietly said, after all, this matter concerns her master, so Jojo should have the right to know. Yin Piaomiao heaved a long sigh, and her gaze lingered on the ice crystal coffin, a trace of exhaustion showing on her face. All these years, from painstakingly gathering medicinal herbs to deliberating and discussing which experienced pill refiner to invite to help after much consideration, she invited Medicine King Island's High Venerable, a perfected god-rank great pill refiner he won. In the end all her previous efforts were wasted. The leaves rustled, and Enai Hanji walked out from behind the forest in a long blue floral dress, her lustrous black hair tied up in a bun. She was supporting a slightly aged and weary elderly man. Why did Hewen get up? Yin Piaomiao turned to ask. On the side, Great Master Wu Yen silently lowered his eyes, his thoughts unknown. Hewen had his disciple Enai Hanji help him up a few steps and looked at the purple-robed woman inside the ice crystal coffin with her eyes tightly shut, as if she was sleeping soundly. The woman's gentle features revealed a bit of charm and enchantment, and her gorgeous appearance was gorgeous. Even though her eyes were closed, it seemed like it could not steal away the myriad of light that belonged to her. If Arbor was here, he would definitely be shocked. Wasn't this the master she yearned for so dearly? Morongsun's body was unharmed, but she had lain inside this ice crystal coffin for who knew how long. Yin Piaomiao turned around and nodded at Hewen. Hewen's body is unwell, so you should rest more. Hewen said in shame. I wasn't able to save your esteemed friend, and even wasted such an excellent medicinal herb for nothing. Yin Piaomiao interrupted him. Hewen also tried his best. Yun Piaomiao would not blame Hewen for not being able to refine the soul-returning pill. In reality, Hewen did refine it, and because he skipped levels to refine a sacred rank pill, Great Master Hewen also suffered a bit of backlash, so his complexion was still pale. Unfortunately, the soul-returning pill that Hewen had refined was barely a low-grade orange pattern pill. Its medicinal strength was not enough to wake Ah Sun up, so in fact this soul-returning pill was only a half-waste pill with poor quality. Yun Fei let out a long sigh. Was this fate? Originally, he thought that with Sir Hewen's ability, as long as he could concoct a middle-grade blue vein pill, he would be able to save Ah Sun. Even if the medicinal effect was slightly lacking, as long as the person could wake up and slowly recuperate for the rest of his life, it would be fine. Of course, a mid-grade blue patterned pill was definitely not comparable to a high-grade purple patterned or supreme-grade black patterned pill. But at least there was hope, right? Who would have thought that even so the chances were still so slim? Yun Fiang silently lowered his eyes and let out a long sigh in his heart. His gentle gaze landed on Morong Sun as he deeply gazed at her. The soul-returning pill failed. This meant that Ah Sun could not be saved in the end. Ah Sun's body had already been laid here for 3 days. She had to be buried the day after tomorrow at the latest. No matter what, in the end people still had to be buried in peace. Morong Sun, this is a polysyllabic word, so some people pronounce it Qian. It's unpleasant to hear, so I must correct you all, haha. Chapter 3963. Enai Hanji glanced at the aloof Yun Fei, and anger involuntarily flashed through her eyes. She walked up to support Sir Hewen and arrogantly questioned, Headmaster Yin, you aren't blaming teacher, right? In order to refine the soul-returning pill this time, teacher spent a lot of effort and paid a huge price. There was even a spiritual energy backlash during the refining process. It's not like my master didn't refine the soul-returning pill. Enai Hanji coldly said. She can only blame herself for being unlucky and not waking up after eating the soul-returning pill. Hanji, Hewen hastily reprimanded her. The soul-returning pill was only refined into a low-grade soul-returning pill, so Hewen's guilt was indescribable. Now that he heard his disciple say this, and tried her best to argue her way back to save face, he felt even more embarrassed. Hewen was a magnanimous person, so he was actually very ashamed that he couldn't win back Morong Sun, especially since he also wasted so many precious herbs. It was very difficult for normal people to gather such a set of herbs, not to mention that it was originally used to save a person's life. Hewen sighed. He then apologetically glanced at Yun Fei and Yun Piaomiao. Apologies, Hanji is still young and doesn't know any better. I hope you don't take offense. Yun Piaomiao and Yun Fei had experienced Enai Hanji's temperament these past few days, so they didn't want to lower themselves to this girl's level. However, Yun Fei's attitude towards Hewen clearly turned colder. If Sir doesn't have other matters, please return to the guest court to recuperate first. Enai Hanji's personality truly wasn't that likable. She was 18 or 19 years old, not an 8 or 9-year-old child. She should be sensible now. Sir Hewen sighed and patted Enai Hanji's hand. Disciple, let's go back first. Enai Hanji's pretty face was cold as she supported Hewen back to the guest court. Along the way, she complained in dissatisfaction. Master, you were injured because of them. Judging from their attitude, they seem to be very dissatisfied with us. Master didn't save her. That's still not Master's responsibility. Enai Hanji angrily said. Moreover, Master was injured to refine this soul-returning pill. What else do they want? The more Enai Hanji spoke, the angrier she became. Could it be that they want Master to pay with his life? Sir Hewen let out a long sigh. Hanji, I know you're worried about Master out of good intentions. It's just that this time, Master wasted so many excellent medicinal herbs to refine a low-grade orange patterned pill. Hewen sighed. Master also feels bad in his heart. Enai Hanji silently lowered her eyes and pursed her lips as she muttered. They were the ones who asked Master to refine it. Besides, it's not like Master hasn't refined any medicinal pills. Yes, it was refined, but the quality was not good enough. Hewen glanced at his beloved disciple, patted her hand and said, It's Master who has let down Principal Yin and the others. Don't always go and insult people. And Hanji snorted. They don't respect master, which means they don't put Medicine King Island in their eyes. What kind of status did Medicine King Island have? Even existences like the City of Shadows and the Fiery City would be very courteous to the people of Medicine King Island. A mere principal of the royal school actually dared to give the people of Medicine King Island a hard time. Yuan was helpless. Principal Yun's attitude towards us is extremely good. It was just that he didn't flatter them like ordinary people. But his usual etiquette was also very considerate, and he had never neglected the master and disciple duo. Chapter 3964. Even so, Hanji was still dissatisfied. Her master worked so hard to save her. So why shouldn't he give them a good look? Yuan knew his beloved disciple's temper, and said helplessly, "All right, we'll stay for 2 more days at most. After that woman is buried, we'll return to the island." Hanji grumbled, probably muttering to herself, "Why do we have to wait for that woman to be buried?" However, since it was her master's decision, Hanji didn't object, and supported his excellency. He went back to the guest court to rest. Seeing the two of them walk away, Great Master Wu Yen sighed and said, "What a pity." He didn't know if it was a pity that his excellency, Yuan, had such a good temperament to take in such a frivolous disciple, or if it was a pity that the superior medicinal ingredients were used to refine pills of that quality. It was a complete waste of the energy and time previously spent. Yun Piaomiao turned to look at the silent Yun Fiang and said softly, "Eldest brother, I insist. No matter what, Jojo should know about this matter." Yun Fiang remained silent, but his silent attitude already made everything clear. 2 days later, Arbor opened her eyes in a small room in the side hall on the first floor of the Longevity Hall filled with divine power on the main planet. Her complexion was a bit pale, but she seemed to be in good spirits. The little stoic reached out to take out a bottle of nutrient fluid from her inner world, and downed it. Qiuqiu's voice immediately rang in her ears, like a demonic tune. "Master, master, you've come out of seclusion, master, master." Arbor raised her brow and looked down at herself. After 3 days of seclusion, there was a layer of black oil on her body. She immediately pinched her nose in disdain. After she advanced to God Realm, she didn't have time to properly stabilize her realm. Now that she had cultivated for 3 days in the outside world for more than 30 days, her realm had clearly stabilized. She had successfully transitioned from spiritual ruin realm to divine ruin realm. As for her current cultivation, she had already reached the beginner level of Divine Dominator level 2. The little girl looked down at her lustrous palms. With a thought, she immediately appeared in the hot spring in her house. After a comfortable bath, he changed into a clean set of violet clothes. The little stoic's figure fluttered and flew out of the main planet's range. Her figure spun lightly, and she appeared next to the little treant that was still emitting demonic sounds. The sapling had just called out, "Master has come out of seclusion," and ignored Qiuqiu. Qiuqiu's life is so bitter. Suddenly, he saw a slender figure appear beside him. His beady eyes immediately lit up. Qiuqiu looked up at its little master with a dreamy expression, its voice rippling. "Master, you seem to have become prettier again." Not only had Master Silver become more beautiful, her temperament had also become much calmer. If he didn't say anything and just stood there, it would be as if his entire person had disappeared from the world. There was no sense of existence at all. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal and the others rushed over when they heard the news. They sized up the little stoic and nodded repeatedly. At this time, the little guy had completely entered the divine realm, and a trace of restrained aura appeared on his body. When she moved, she could conquer the world. When she moved, she was as quiet as the floating clouds and the idle moon. Her exquisite face was expressionless, making it hard for people to look away. I refined quite a few level 15 divinity breakthrough pills, divinity congealing pills, and divinity recovery pills. I don't know if they'll be useful to you guys. Arbor casually tossed several bottles of pills over. Dao Wuji and the others gleefully caught a bottle in each hand, and their eyes instantly lit up. Sir Jojo's products were definitely extraordinary items. Chapter 3965. When Arbor exited the star domain, He immediately saw Emolienne striding forward with a slight smile. "You've been waiting for a long time, huh?" Arbor blinked and discovered that he had been pulled into his hubby's embrace. "Waiting for a long time is what I miss." Emolienne lowered his head to look at him, a smile rippling in his phoenix eyes. "My Jojo, with your current appearance, I really want to hide you forever and not let anyone see you." He pinched her soft little face, his expression full of gentleness. Arbor's eyes brightened. "I'm beautiful?" Emolienne almost laughed out loud. He nodded and said, "Extremely beautiful." Arbor nodded in satisfaction and caressed his handsome face in passing. "Only like this can I be worthy of my peerlessly handsome hubby, Emolienne." It seemed like his wife had intentionally or unintentionally flirted with him again. What a vexing little fellow. Emolienne was helpless. He pulled her into his embrace and lowered his head to kiss her fair forehead. "Do you feel unwell?" Jojo's complexion seemed to have paled a bit from refining pills above her level this time. He wondered if she was suffering from the backlash of her divine power. "I'm fine." Arbor patted the back of his hand, indicating for him to set his mind at ease. "I've already taken the nutrient solution. I'll be fine after recuperating for a day or two." As he spoke, he took out a jade box half the size of a palm from his pocket and placed it in Emolienne's palm. He looked up and winked at him. "Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you." Emolienne couldn't describe what he was feeling, but at this moment, he tightly gripped the jade box in his hand and hugged the little stoic tightly, as if wanting to fuse her into the depths of his heart. "Jojo, you're so nice." He rubbed his chin lightly on her small head and cupped her small face, gazing at her affectionately. "Have I ever told you that you're the most wonderful girl in the world?" "I'm indeed not bad." The little stoic's eyes shone. If she had a small tail right now, it would definitely wag. Emolienne chuckled and lifted her up, kissing her without allowing her to protest. "My Chow Chow." Jojo was full of surprises. Every day the more one interacted with Jojo, the more one fell in love with him. "Reporting to your highness." Stay Up Late's voice was heard from outside the door. The little stoic's charming face flushed red, and she stuttered as she reached out to punch him with a moderate force. Emolienne let go of him unhappily and turned to look at the door. "What's the matter? Why was this guy so tactless? Can't you see that he's being intimate with his wife?" They hadn't seen each other for a few days. Even a kiss couldn't make up for the emptiness in his heart. Aoyi coughed lightly. "King Jing's residence has sent someone to welcome the crown princess." Prince Emo frowned. Only now did he remember the matter of Princess Consort Jing's birthday. However, Arbor understood his intentions and grasped his hand. "Let's send the medicine to the palace first. Royal father should be anxious from waiting these past few days." Even though Emo Luxing didn't press or ask, he was definitely more anxious than anyone else on the inside. She understood this feeling of worrying about personal gains and losses. It was rare that she didn't want to diss the emperor, and only wanted to send the medicine over first. "Okay." Emolienne gently glanced at his wife and grasped the jade box in his hand. When he recalled that the soul-returning pill was in his hands, there was hope for his mother's soul to return. For some reason, Emolienne actually felt a sense of homesickness. Arbor gently looked at him and said softly, "I'll go with you." "Okay." Emolienne grasped her small hand. No matter what happened, as long as Jojo was there, he would be at ease. Chapter 3966. As long as Jojo was by his side, no matter what kind of hopeless situation or hardship he faced, he would not be afraid. The two stepped out of the door, and the little crown princess said to the steward from King Jing's estate, "You go back first. After some time, His Highness and I will go to King Jing's estate by ourselves." The steward naturally did not dare to neglect the two, and nodded repeatedly. He watched with a puzzled expression as the two got on the carriage and drove towards the palace. Strange. Why did the crown prince and crown princess choose to return to the palace at this time? When the steward returned to King Jing's estate, he did not dare to hide anything and told King Zheng and Princess Consort Zheng the whole story. King Zheng, Emo Shikong, frowned slightly. He was naturally somewhat dissatisfied. Previously, the husband and wife were so humble when they went to deliver the invitation. Who would have thought that the crown prince and crown princess would suddenly change their mind today? Princess Consort Zheng could tell that the king was dissatisfied. She lowered her eyes slightly and said faintly, "King, don't be angry. Didn't the steward say that His Highness the Crown Prince and Crown Princess will come after finishing their business? You can't delay His Highness the Crown Prince and Crown Princess business because of this concubine's small birthday." King Zheng said coldly, "The Crown Prince has been staying at the Crown Princess's maternal home these past few days. What business does he have that he has to wait until today to enter the palace?" In Mo Shikong's view, the Crown Prince was clearly showing him his power. He was telling him, with his noble and unparalleled status, he would be giving him face if he wanted to come. If he did not want to come, he could not do anything to him. Mo Shikong lowered his eyes and sneered, "What a high-spirited His Highness the Crown Prince." Princess Consort Zheng frowned slightly. "King, it's fine to say such words in front of Qinxia. Don't show such an attitude in front of others." King Zheng and Mo Shikong slapped the table with a bang and said angrily, "What, does Princess Consort also think that in front of the Crown Prince, I'm just the mud under his feet that can be trampled on?" Princess Consort Zheng sighed. Her gaze was fixed on her husband as she said, "Your Highness, don't forget this. If you don't have the Mo surname, you're nothing. How dare you?" Mo Shikong grabbed a teacup and smashed it on the ground. The group of servant girls and manservants waiting outside the garden all knelt down in unison. They were so frightened that they almost didn't dare to move their eyes away, and breathed heavily. "What are you doing?" A rather imposing voice came from outside the door. Suhi crossed the tall threshold with his hands behind his back. He glanced at his son and daughter-in-law with a dignified gaze. Liang Shi blindly followed behind her husband. Su Shitao, on the other hand, followed the two elders in with an expression of watching a good show. "Greetings, father and mother." Mo Shikong was very respectful towards his parents. When he saw them, he quickly got up and bowed. Princess Consort Zheng stood up and bowed to her parents-in-law with a cold and unremarkable face. "Father, mother, sister-in-law, don't tell me you've made elder brother angry again." Su Shitao slanted his eyes and curled his lips. "As his wife, how can you be so rude to big brother?" Sister-in-law was born in an aristocratic family, but she didn't expect that she couldn't even compare to a girl from a small family. Her upbringing is really bad. Princess Consort Zheng's fingers trembled and curled up. She hated that she couldn't fly up and give this sister-in-law two heavy slaps. She talked to her about etiquette and upbringing? A shameless woman who could accept others calling her Princess Tao, with a clear conscience, dared to talk to her about upbringing. Chapter 3968. The soul-returning pill didn't need to be swallowed, it melted in the mouth. On by Wuxia's body, there seemed to be a faint trace of soft light. Mo Luxing stood in front of the ice coffin, holding his breath and waiting, his gaze glued to his wife, not daring to let go at all. Arbor tilted her head to look at her husband, squeezed his hand, and said in a low voice, "Don't worry." After this soul-returning pill was refined, she knew in her heart that Mo Lian's mother could be saved. This was a black-veined supreme-grade soul-returning pill. But the strange thing was, to refine such a heaven-defying pill, there was actually not a trace of lightning floating over to strike her in broad daylight. Could it be the heavenly Tao didn't want to bother with her anymore? Mo Lian turned her head to look at her, lightly nodding her head, a faint smile flitting across her lips. And at this time, Mo Luxing suddenly cried out in alarm, grabbing his son's hand. "Little glutinous dumpling, quickly look. Listen, listen, your mother, is there a breathing sound?" Mo Lian's hand hurt from her father's grip. She couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. "Yes." Mo Luxing's eyes quickly lit up, his gaze landing on his wife, nervously grabbing his son's hand tightly. Bai Wuxia was quietly lying in the ice coffin. From the faint breathing at the beginning, it slowly became continuous. That voice, when it landed in Mo Luxing's ears, was like the sound of nature twining around. Mo Luxing's eyes immediately lit up with joy, pulling his son forward and saying, "Wuxia, Wuxia, can you hear my voice? Wuxia, Wuxia." God knows how many days and nights he had also been like this, constantly calling for her. But his Wuxia, from beginning to end, never gave a trace of response. Right now, he seemed to have seen hope, saw the dawn rising. Emo Lucian couldn't help but tremble. Throwing away his son's hand, he caressed his wife's somewhat cold wrist. Emo Lien at the side rolled her eyes at her father. This was a typical person who forgot about his son, once he had a wife in his eyes. Men he. The little stoic turned to look at her husband's expression. She blinked and walked up to hold his hand. After taking the pill, mother should wake up in at most 7 to 8 minutes. She hasn't opened her eyes yet. She probably slept pretended for too long, didn't dare to open her eyes open, so she's not in a good mood. The father and son hurriedly turned to look at her, revealing a somewhat similar puzzled face at the same time. Unimpeded chi. Was there such a saying? Yes. The little stoic spouted nonsense in deadly earnest. Royal father will pass on a breath to mother. Mother will be able to open her eyes after her breathing calms down. Transferring chi? Emo Liusheng's eyes lit up. He knew how to do this, and he was quite adept at it. However, Emo Lucian glanced at the 2 candles at the side and narrowed his eyes. Don't these 2 brats know how to hide first? The 2 of them looked at him calmly. Emo Lucian had no other choice but to pretend that the 2 of them didn't exist. He stepped forward to give his wife a kiss. However, he had only bent down for a few seconds, and his breath had yet to come close. The Empress's eyes suddenly opened. The little stoic blinked and met Emo Lien's eyes. Emo Lucian stood there dumbfounded, unable to react for a while. The 2 of them stared at each other like this for a while before Emo Lucian belatedly grabbed the Empress's wrist and said excitedly, Wuxia. Chapter 3969. Bai Wuxia's gaze was somewhat dazed as she stared deeply at her husband. Her pair of phoenix eyes were overflowing with light. This deep sleep had lasted for 17 years. When she woke up now, the 2 of them felt as if they had met after a lifetime. Bai Wuxia raised his hand. His gaze moved slightly, and he touched his face that was full of warmth. In fact, all these years, she could always vaguely hear his voice. Every once in a while, he would whisper in her ear for a long time. It was such a man, her husband, the love of her life. For 17 years, he had never given up on saving her. Just now, when she woke up, and was happy to find that she seemed to be able to move. For some reason, because she was so excited, she felt a sense of homesickness, and didn't dare to open her eyes for a moment. Now looking at that familiar face, looking at the face that she had been thinking about for a long time, the face that was engraved in her heart, Bai Wuxia smiled in relief, and reached out to hug Emo Lucian. Wuxia, Wuxia. Emo Lucian kept calling her name, and hugged her tightly. It was as if at this moment, there was no one else in their line of sight except for each other. Bai Wuxia took a deep breath and looked up. She saw a young man who looked somewhat similar to her husband, and whose eyes were very similar to her own. Her heart trembled slightly, and she suddenly raised her hand in the direction of Emo Lien. Emo Lien quickly stepped forward, and her hand was firmly grabbed by her somewhat cold hand. Bai Wuxia turned to look at her husband with joy. Lucian, this is our family's little glutinous rice ball? Emo Lucian nodded. Bai Wuxia reached out to hug her son, tears streaming down her face. Little glutinous rice ball had grown so big. She had missed her son's 17 years of growth. Thinking of this, Bai Wuxia's heart was filled with bitterness. She raised her hand and touched her son's hair. Bai Wuxia's eyes were filled with love. Little glutinous rice ball, do you blame mother? Mother hasn't been able to take good care of you all these years, and has made you suffer a lot. It was the nature of mother and son. Even if it was the first time they met in 17 years, Emo Lien did not feel any unfamiliarity with his mother in front of him. In fact, his memories seemed to have brought him back to 17 years ago. He recalled the scene when his mother, dressed in white, carried him to the half-moon cliff to enjoy the scenery. At that time, she was exactly the same as she was now. She held his little paw and smiled as she raised her hand to pat his head. These 2 figures inexplicably overlapped, causing Emo Lien's eyes to moisten slightly. Mother! The Crown Prince's voice was choked with emotion as he called out softly. Celestial Empress tears instantly fell like rain. She raised her hand and caressed her son's head. Little glutinous dumpling, mother has let you down. For the rest of our lives, Mother will take good care of you and make it up to you. Emolian immediately regained her senses and raised her head. Mother, I've married a wife. I've already given the rest of my life to my wife. The Emperor and Empress. Wuxia chuckled and turned to look at Arbor, who was standing at the side. He waved at her and looked at her with joy. Little glutinous dumpling is marrying a wife. That's a perfect pair. Tang Yuan's wife. Sir Jojo took a few steps forward with a dumbfounded expression, and Celestial Empress gently held his small hand. Wuxia looked at her daughter-in-law with smiling eyes. She felt that she was very compatible with her at first glance, and her fondness for her was beyond words. The little girl was too exquisite. Wuxia believed that her appearance was incomparably magnificent, but this little stoic-faced girl in front of her actually surpassed her by half. Chapter 3970. Tang Yuan's wife. Come over and let mother take a look. You're really born well. Arbor. Emolian. Emolution couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth and laugh out loud. See, he also had a wife. In the future, he would also have a wife to help him. This pair of little brats had been arrogant in front of him for a long time. It was still unknown who would win in the future. Mother, my wife's name is Jojo. Emolian frowned unhappily. Jojo. Wuxia smiled lightly and held Arbor's little hand. Jojo. Wuxia sighed and said regretfully, Mother missed little Tang Yuan's 17 years of growth and missed your extremely important wedding. Mother can't make up for these things anymore. But Mother can promise you that I won't miss anything for you in the future. Wuxia looked at the pair of children in front of her with curved eyes and said softly, Okay. Prince Emo reached out and held his wife's hand. Both of them nodded. A series of hurried footsteps came from the entrance of the ice palace. Old Master Bai rushed in excitedly with his people. At a glance, he saw his daughter sitting up in the ice coffin. His pair of old eyes immediately turned red. Xiar, father. Wuxia was supported by Emo Lusheng and slowly stepped out of the ice coffin. Old Master Bai rushed forward with red eyes and hugged his daughter into his arms. The feelings that he had suppressed for a long time were released in an instant. Emolian glanced at them and held his wife's little hand. The young couple quietly left the room. As soon as they walked out of Emolusheng's bedroom, the two of them looked up at the bright light outside the sky at the same time. The sun was scorching today. In the blue sky, there were no clouds in sight. It was as if it was announcing something. Arbor turned to look at Emolian and saw a smile on his lips. His footsteps were light, and it was obvious that he was in a good mood. That's right. What could be more delightful than having a whole family together? The corners of Jojo's mouth curled up as he gently poked his palm with his finger. Soon the whole Dragon Flame City was in an uproar. Celestial Empress consumed the pill refined by the Crown Princess and was completely awake. The Great Emperor was overjoyed and personally wrote a letter, announcing to the world that he would be pardoned. At this time, Arbor and Emolian's carriage had already arrived at the gate of King Zheng's residence. King Zheng and Consort Zheng personally came out to welcome them with a smile. There was no sign on Prince Zheng's face that he had quarreled with Princess Zheng because of the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess. Zheng Wang Emolian cupped his fists and bowed towards Emolian. Your Highness the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess have graced my humble abode with your presence. Please forgive me for not going out to welcome you. Prince Emo was in a good mood today. He smiled faintly at King Zheng and nodded. Brother King Zheng, sister-in-law King Zheng, there's no need to be so polite. You may rise. Arbor's face was calm as he said faintly, Today is Princess Zheng's birthday. I hope Princess Zheng won't take offense to this small gift. With that, Arbor raised his hand, and Kai Xiao presented a palm-sized brocade box with both hands. She said in a clear voice, One beautifying pill from Zhenhua Workshop to congratulate Princess Zheng on her birthday. I wish Princess Consort a long life and a happy life. Many people at the door sucked in a breath of cold air and whispered in each other's ears. They muttered softly, feeling that the Crown Princess was very generous. One had to know that the beautifying pill from Zhenhua Workshop had already been sold at a sky-high price of 5 million each. Chapter 3971. Just like that, The 3 beautifying pills every month were all sought after by the noble women of Dragonflame City. Moreover, it was said that the beautifying pill's reputation had already spread. If its reputation spread throughout the 3 states in the future, the price would probably be more than 5 million. After all, the Precious Painting Workshop had a limited supply of beautifying pills every month, and they would have to wait for another month to sell out. In order to get the beautifying pill as soon as possible, many noble women and daughters of aristocratic families did not hesitate to spend a lot of money to buy one. Princess Zheng looked flattered and quickly ordered her personal maidservant to take the small brocade box that Saishio handed over. After curtsying towards Qiaomu, Princess Consort Zheng said with a smile, "Many thanks to the Crown Prince Consort." Princess Consort Zheng's appearance was clearly very mediocre among the many noble ladies. Her forehead was narrow and slightly sunken, her nose was sharp and narrow, and her mouth was very wide. But today, under the contrast of her bright red dress, her entire body was radiant, and it made her originally mediocre appearance a little brighter. The corners of Mo Shikong's mouth finally curled into an extremely faint smile. The Crown Princess offered such a generous gift. Regardless of whether she was doing it for others to see, at least Prince Zheng's residence had gained face today. Which man did not want face? If the Crown Prince and Crown Princess did not come today, there would definitely be rumors that the Crown Prince and Crown Princess did not care about him, Prince Zheng. Recently, the entire Prince Zheng's residence was not very peaceful. If such rumors were to spread, it would be too troublesome. Fortunately, the little Crown Princess was tactful. Mo Shikong nodded slightly in satisfaction and turned to the Crown Prince with a smile. "Crown Prince, please enter the residence." Prince Mo nodded slightly. He was still thinking about the machine-operated bird and the royal school, so he did not plan to stay in Prince Zheng's residence for long. But if he did not enter the residence, it would be too embarrassing for Prince Zheng. So he planned to enter Prince Zheng's residence with Jojo for a few drinks, and then find an excuse to leave. Mo Shikong led the way with a smile, and led the Crown Prince up the stairs. Along the way, all the guests bowed in greeting. "Your Highness the Crown Prince." "Crown Princess." Crown Prince Mo had just stepped up 2 steps, while holding his wifey's hand, when he heard a soft sobbing sound coming from behind them. It was accompanied by an extremely bitter cry that sounded like the weeping of a resentful woman. "Your Highness." Mo Shikong's face changed slightly. Everyone turned their heads and looked curiously at the weeping and delicate woman. This woman looked delicate, but her belly was slightly bulging. It was obvious that she had been pregnant for several months. Princess Zheng's face turned cold at once. She naturally recognized this delicate woman, and had even secretly sent people to investigate her. King Zheng had been close to the Lin family recently. In Princess Consort Zheng's eyes, his eagerness to rope in the Lin family was too unwise. This woman was the daughter of a concubine of the Lin clan, Lin Wan-er, a shameless little wench. She actually dared to take advantage of the day, when she was celebrating her birthday, with a basin full of guests, to come to the Prince Zheng's residence with her belly protruding, and demanding an explanation. She was truly a lowly child raised by a slut. Princess Zheng's eyes turned cold instantly. She stood loftily on the wide steps and pointed at the woman. "Come, take this woman who is blocking the road and making a ruckus away. Flog her to death." The delicate woman looked up abruptly, her eyes filled with disbelief. When she met Princess Zheng's cold eyes, she could not help but shrink her neck. The night continued. Chapter 3972. Your Highness, Your Highness. Lin Wanner panicked. She didn't know what to do when she saw several servants coming forward to pull her. She hurriedly reached out to cover her stomach and cried repeatedly. Her beautiful eyes stared straight at Mo Shikong. Xiao Mu remained expressionless as her husband pulled her to the side, creating a wide path for the king of Zheng and his family to express themselves to their heart's content. Stop! Prince Zheng Mo Shikong angrily rebuked. He walked down the steps and forcefully pushed away the servants who were pulling the delicate flower. He lifted his foot and kicked one of them out. Lin Wanner wept and wiped her tears. She threw herself into Prince Zheng's arms, looking miserable, as if she was about to be trampled to death. She sobbed, Your Highness, Your Highness. Princess Zheng was so angry that she trembled all over. In order to welcome His Highness the Crown Prince, the Crown Princess, all the guests were standing in front of the door. This good show was about to start. She was the main character of today's birthday banquet, and Prince Zheng's first wife. Now, her husband was hugging a concubine's daughter of the Lin family in front of so many guests, and comforting her gently. How could she, the dignified Princess Zheng, put her face? Shi Yongyan was so angry that she fell backwards. She had already noticed that many madams and young misses around her were covering their mouths and looking like they were watching a good show. They were secretly laughing at her. Mo Shikong, you actually treat me like this and don't give me face. Princess Zheng didn't care about her face at this moment. She flicked her sleeves and walked towards the little white flower. Mo Shikong, you've done me right. Shi Yongyan's eyes were filled with endless anger. Mo Shikong was also somewhat regretful and angry. Of course, he knew what day it was today. He also didn't have much face to make such a fuss in front of so many masters and madams. He blamed Lin Wanner for being insensible in his heart. But he was also angry that his wife didn't know how to handle things. Lin Wanner was young and impulsive. Couldn't she be more tolerant? Which first wife would argue with a mistress at the front door? She really didn't know how to handle things. If she had asked someone to bring Wanner in first and deal with this matter later, she would not have ended up in such a situation. Enough. Thinking of this, Mo Shikong glanced at Princess Consort Zheng with dissatisfaction. Can't you see that the guests are waiting at the door? Mo Shikong asked coldly. Why don't you let them in? As for Wanner, her body is not in good condition. Let her rest in the backyard of the prince's mansion. A trace of anger flashed through Princess Zheng's eyes. She glanced at Lin Wanner, who was slightly complacent, and said coldly, Mo Shikong, if this woman had stepped into the backyard of the mansion today, do you think I would have ordered someone to kill her? Among the crowd of onlookers, the madams and young misses were still fine. They didn't mind watching a good show. The young geniuses of the various large aristocratic families all became embarrassed one after another. In their opinion, it was not a problem for a man to be dissolute and flirt outside. However, if the affairs of his mistress were to spread to the birthday banquet of the first wife, it would be too embarrassing. At this time, it was not right to leave, but it was also not right to stay. A group of people stood at the door and looked at each other in dismay. Princess Zheng's unwillingness to give in completely made Prince Zheng, Mo Shikong, unable to get out of the embarrassing situation. In addition, the little white flower Lin Wanner beside him was crying nonstop. Chapter 3973. The anger in Mo Shikong's heart suddenly rose. He took the crying Lin Wanner into his arms and comforted her softly. Then, he turned to glare at Princess Zheng and said, You don't know the rules. Which legal wife would disregard her manners and argue with a concubine outside the door like this? What are you all doing? Su He, who had heard the news, walked over angrily. Behind him was Madame Liang, who walked over submissively, and Su Shitao, who was arrogant and domineering. Seeing this scene, Su Shitao couldn't help but laugh in schadenfreude. Eldest sister-in-law, it's not that I, as your younger sister, want to criticize you, but a Wang Fei like you who constantly contradicts my eldest brother and makes him angry is really rare in the world. Princess Zheng sneered. Since all of you don't care about your face, my face doesn't seem to be that important. Shi Yongyan, Mo Shikong, Prince Zheng, said coldly and sternly, staring at her with a warning gaze. Mo Shikong, ask yourself honestly. All these years, I've helped you take care of everything in Prince Zheng's mansion. Have I done anything wrong to you? Do you have to humiliate me like this? On my birthday, you let this woman humiliate me while she's pregnant with a bastard's child? Mo Shikong was speechless. He turned to glare at the sobbing Lin Wan'er. He lowered his voice and said, "Go back first. Didn't I tell you last time that this matter can't be rushed? Wait for the storm to die down." "How can I not be rushed?" Lin Wan'er grabbed Mo Shikong's hand and cried while wiping her tears. She said softly, "Your Highness, even if I'm not in a hurry, our child can't wait." Wanna looks at this belly. It's getting bigger day by day. Little White Flower sobbed while wiping her tears. "Your Highness, this is your first son. How can you let him suffer like this? Your Highness, you know my situation in the Lin family. My legal mother and sister Miao have always disliked me. If I stay in the Lin family, I don't know if I can keep this child alive." Speaking of the sad part, Lin Wan'er almost choked with sobs. "I came to find Wang Yi to discuss matters because I had no other choice. I didn't know that today was Wang Fei's birthday." Mo Shikong looked at her sobbing. She looked so weak that she could faint at any time. His heart ached as he hugged her and patted her back. "Sister-in-law," Su Shitao said sarcastically. "How can you as the wife be so petty? Big brother is just taking in a concubine. Is there a need for you to block the entrance and cause such a ruckus? Younger sister-in-law, you are an unmarried girl. I advise you to be careful with your words." Princess Consort Zheng coldly faced Mo Shikong's family of troublesome people. However, his expression remained fearless. "You can even reach your hands into your elder brother's and sister-in-law's rooms. Do you not want to get married anymore?" Princess Consort Zheng sneered. Su Shitao was so angry that he stomped his feet. Just as he was about to curse, his mother, Liang Shi, tugged at his hand, and he resentfully shut his mouth. Sir Jojo frowned and tugged at the crown prince's fingers. Mo Lien felt the little fellow's soft fingers rubbing against his fingertips. He smiled and lowered his head to look at her. "What's wrong? The atmosphere is foul. Let's go." "Okay." Mo Lien naturally wouldn't object. Following the principle that whatever his wife said was right, he nodded and took her little hand to walk towards the carriage. Chapter 3974. Everyone silently looked at each other, before looking at the young couple's back in astonishment. His Highness the Crown Prince and Crown Princess left, just like that? Su Shitao was rebuffed by Princess Consort Zheng. So when she saw Arbor and Emolian leave without even looking back, her gaze immediately landed on them. Earlier, she was in a hurry to find fault with her sister-in-law, so she didn't pay attention to these two people at all. Now that she saw them, she immediately became even angrier. Wasn't this the woman who attacked her in the despondent pavilion? Second brother Su Shihua even wanted to seek justice for her. But in the end, he was beaten to death and carried back by this woman in the Royal Academy. That's right, eldest brother even warned her again and again not to provoke this damn woman in the future. What else did he say? He said that her status was noble, and her cultivation was unfathomable. If she went against her, she would only be asking for trouble. However, this was intolerable, all right? It was truly the case that when enemies met, their eyes blazed with hatred. Su Shitao's hatred for the little stoic skyrocketed with this one glance. However, before she could step forward, she saw her eldest brother quickly walk over to stop them. Crown Prince, Crown Princess, what are you doing? Since Brother Prince Zheng is busy with family matters, we and the Crown Princess won't disturb you any longer. Mo Lian glanced coldly at Prince Zheng, the disdain in her eyes evident. My wife dislikes your family for being messy. She even feels noisy when she takes a step inside. Prince Zheng's face flushed a bit. He also knew that today's incident had indeed turned the entire prince's estate into the laughingstock of Dragon Flame City. The little white flower beside him, Lin Wan'er, sneaked a peek at the crown prince. Her eyes wavered, and then her eyeballs turned slightly. Suddenly, her body tilted, and she threw herself in front of Arbor, kneeling in front of her. Crown Princess. Lin Wan'er sobbed as she wiped her tears and said, I beg the Crown Princess to uphold justice for this concubine. The Crown Princess is the woman with the noblest status here. I hope that the Crown Princess will plead for leniency on concubine's behalf, and beg Her Highness Consort Zheng to stop forcing concubine. Bitch, you dare? Princess Consort Zheng was so angry that she fell backwards. Her breath was stuck in her chest, and she almost couldn't breathe. This bitch was really bold. She actually dared to distort the truth and say that she forced her? Lin Wana looked frightened. She lowered her head and crawled a few steps on the ground until she reached the young crown princess's feet. She cried so hard that she almost couldn't breathe. This concubine is only an insignificant person. Even if this concubine enters the prince's fu, I absolutely won't threaten Zheng Wangfei's position. I hope that the crown princess will put in a good word for me. Everyone looked at each other. Those who knew the true nature of the little crown princess could not help but silently light a candle for this girl with 0 IQ. It's one thing for you to kick up a fuss with King Jing's family. But why did you have to go and kick up a fuss in front of the little crown princess? Is the little crown princess someone that you can kick up a fuss with? Saishio. As expected, the crown prince consort's cold voice instantly broke the clamor on the ground. Everyone could not help but tremble slightly in their hearts. Kaishio took 2 steps forward, her gaze cold and severe. Her hand moved like lightning, and 2 slaps landed on the stupefied Lin Waner's face. Audacious bitch. What kind of lowly status do you have to actually dare to speak to the crown princess like this? You even had the crown princess plead for leniency on your behalf and arrange for you to be a concubine when you enter King Zheng's fu. Chapter 3975. A lowly servant dared to make a big fuss in front of Princess Consort Zheng. How was this a prince's residence? Even an ordinary noble family wouldn't be so unruly. Crown Princess. Mo Shikong was so angry that his face turned green. Little White Flower was trembling like a withered flower in the wind. She was so frightened that she trembled all over. She looked as though she had suffered a great shock as she gazed at the young crown prince consort, who was looking down at her from above. Arbor glanced coldly at Mo Shikong. Then her gaze suddenly shifted to Little White Flower. She reached out her hand and sucked. The delicate little flower let out a trembling moan and was sucked in by Arbor. His neck was tightly gripped by a small porcelain white hand. Everyone had a stupefied look on their faces. Prince Mo's eyes were smiling, and the corners of his lips were slightly raised. Isn't Princess Consort Zheng generous and benevolent enough to you? Arbor's gaze was extremely cold as she looked at the delicate flower that kept trembling in her hand. If someone dares to come to this crown princess's birthday and humiliates me, infuriates me, provokes me, and challenges my patience. Arbor's lips curved into a cold wooden smile. I will make her regret that she dared to come to this world for once. Everyone. Didn't they say not to provoke the little crown princess? This blind fellow just had to go and make a fuss in front of the crown prince consort. Look, the young crown prince consort was someone who would go berserk on a whim. Little White Flower only felt that the cold hand on her neck was like a ghost's hand of death, squeezing her neck so hard that she couldn't breathe at all. If someone dares to steal my person. Arbor silently lowered her eyes, and her bone-chilling gaze fell on the trembling and almost stiff woman. I will kill her, and then I will kill the person who betrayed me. I will grind the bones of your true love into ashes. She leaned close to Little White Flower's ear and whispered with an indifferent expression. I will tell you that in this life and in the next life, even if you become ghosts, you will never see each other again. Lin Waner was so scared that she almost went into shock. The woman in front of her had a demon-like expression, and it made her tremble with fear. Xiaomu looked down at her belly and creased her brows. You should rejoice that this crown prince consort isn't vassal consort Zheng. Seeing that you are innocent, I will let you go today. Don't bother me in the future. Scram. Everyone. While everyone silently engraved the crown prince consort's words in their minds, they also secretly looked up at His Highness the Crown Prince. They wanted to see how His Highness would react. After all, the words that the Crown Princess had said earlier could be considered as treason and heresy. Then they couldn't help but want to kneel to His Highness. Not only did that His Highness not feel that the Crown Prince consort was wrong, he even stared at his wife with bright dog eyes, as though his wife was the stars, sun, and moon in the sky, dazzling and illuminating people. Alright, the crown princess's thunder temper was 99%, no, 100%, caused by His Highness the Crown Prince's spoiling. Since His Highness the Crown Prince was enjoying it, haha, there was nothing more to say. When they got on the carriage, Prince Emo immediately reached out and pulled the fuming Sir Jojo into his arms. Jojo, let's ignore that messy family in the future. His baby was so angry that he wanted to beat that idiot Emo Shikong to death. Arbor glanced at him and suddenly asked curiously, "Isn't this the way back to the palace?" "Jojo, let's go back to the academy. See you tomorrow." Chapter 3976. Startled, Arbor tilted her head and looked at Emolien. "What's wrong?" Lotus wouldn't have gone back to the academy if there wasn't anything important. After all, her mother had just woken up. As her son and daughter-in-law, she should have spent time with her mother first. Emolien rubbed her hair. "I've sent someone to inform father and mother. There were too many things to tell you. When you went to the main planet to refine pills, Yin Piaomiao sent a mechanical bird to inform you and ask you to go back. Although that Dean Yun's actions are unreliable, he's still an expert. But he wouldn't joke around with us about important things." Emolien gazed at his wifey. "I keep feeling that there should be something important that requires you to make a trip back." Xiaomu's gaze was a bit dazed. What could Yin Piaomiao want from her? Is it about the final round of the heaven roll? Emolien shook his head. It was agreed that the final round would be postponed to the end of the month. If it was only about this, Yin Piaomiao wouldn't have sent a mechanical bird to inform you and ask you to go back. Arbor thought it made sense and nodded. Then let's go back and see. Since she couldn't guess what it was, she would talk about it when she went back. Emolien reached out and brushed a strand of hair in front of her eyes to the side of her face. He poked her soft face. "Don't worry." It was impossible to say that she wasn't worried. After all, the more unknown something was, the more worrying it was. It was just that with Jojo's Lotus by her side, she wouldn't be worried, afraid, or flinch no matter what happened. Emolien held her hand. "Jojo, let's use the teleportation array when we get out of the city." "Okay." Arbor nodded and took out a teleportation array made of 128 jade talismans from her inner world. This set of talisman arrays had twice the number of teleportation talismans compared to the 64 teleportation talismans. The teleportation distance could now reach up to 500 miles. He could teleport about 20 times in a row. Even though there was such a long distance between Dragon Flame City and Wind Thunder City, it was estimated that they would reach Wind Thunder City in half an hour by alternating between two sets of teleportation talismans. The two of them left the city and activated the talisman formation in a low-key manner, beginning the teleportation journey that was tens of thousands of miles long. On the other side, Wind Thunder City, Royal Academy's back mountain. Amidst the crisp pine forest, a gentle breeze brushed past their clothes and blew away the pine needles that covered the ground. Yin Piaomiao's eyes were filled with exhaustion. She could not help but sigh softly in her heart. It had already been 2 days since the mechanical bird was sent out to send the message, but there was still no sign of the little girl returning. Could it be that this was the fate of the heavenly Tao, and it was irreversible? The paper money scattered all over the place, floating on the trees, falling on the ground, brushing past the coffin made of ice crystals, and falling into the tomb. Yunfei's eyelids drooped slightly. His thin white figure looked exceptionally thin. Standing behind him, Great Master Wu Yan, Wei Wei, Zhou Danjin, Instructor Hu, and the others were also silent for a long time. All these years, Dean Yin had traveled all over the world to collect herbs and find a way to save Peak Master Morong. They had all seen it and understood it silently. However, the world was so unpredictable. There were many things that one couldn't succeed, even if one tried hard. Chapter 3977. Perhaps, no matter how much he did, in the end, he would still get nothing. Just like him, he had thought that if he tried a little harder, he would be able to pick up the pace with her. However, reality proved that there were many things that you missed at the time. Perhaps you would miss them forever. Yunfei silently stared at the ice crystal coffin, tears falling silently. "Big brother." Yin Piaomiao turned to look at him, reached out her hand, and gently patted his shoulder. Are you really not going to wait for Jojo? Jojo is a child who values relationships and righteousness. If you don't let her know about this, I'm afraid that she will blame you in the future. Yin Fei frowned slightly and said softly, why do you have to make her sad again? If he could save Ah Sin that day, the master and disciple would be able to reunite happily. But now since he didn't manage to save her, why bother telling her about it? Your master originally had a chance to live, but now there's no hope at all. Isn't this making that child sad again for no reason? It's enough for him to experience the feeling of heartbreak alone. Yin Fei closed his eyes and sighed softly. There's no need to wait any longer, let's bury her. The few of them lifted the crystal coffin and placed it into the large wooden coffin at the side. After placing some burial objects inside, the few men who were working turned to look in Yin Fei's direction. Seeing him nod with a heavy expression, they closed the coffin. Whoosh! A shovel of soil fell down. Master Wu Yin immediately chanted in a deep voice. Return to your life, Paradise Amitabha. May your pure light shine on me. Rustle, rustle, rustle. The falling soil covered it. The benevolent oath took me. I am mindful today call Tathagata's name. Bodhi path seek the pure land. Buddha's original oath. If there are living beings who wish to give birth to my country, the light from the talisman array dimmed, and the guards guarding Wind Thunder City couldn't help but blink, looking at the man and woman who suddenly appeared at the city gate with a stunned expression. The two of them raised the Royal Academy's identity token at the same time, and the guards immediately bowed and retreated to the side. Although they were curious, they didn't know where the two of them teleported from, and the guards wouldn't ask. His gaze followed the backs of the two as they entered the city. Arbor and Emolian held hands and ran towards the misty peak. She didn't run far before she heard a surprised cry. Xiao Xiao! Prince Emo! Arbor and Emolian both turned around and saw Qi Xianxian and Little Fatty standing at the side of the crowd, waving happily at them. You're back so soon. Have you settled everything at home? By the way, Brother Mu has returned to the capital. Did you meet him? Arbor shook his head slightly. Mu Xingqian should have returned to the Mu residence directly. After she came out of seclusion, she went to the palace, and then left the city. Naturally, she didn't see him. Jojo, the finals have been postponed to the end of the month. Don't be so impatient. No. Arbor shook his head again. I didn't come back for the competition this time. It was the dean who released the dawn bird and told me to come back. Principal? Qi Xianxian was stunned. Did something happen in the academy? Nothing. Little Fatty and Qi Xianxian said in unison, and then looked at each other. But speaking of which, the dean has been acting strangely these few days. I heard that he often brings people to the mountain behind the academy. Oh, by the way, the dean also invited an alchemy grandmaster from the Medicine King Island. That alchemy grandmaster's temper is alright, but his disciple Haha is really. Chapter 3978. Where are the dean and the rest now? They should be at the back of the mountain. Little Fatty scratched his head. These few days, the dean has sent people to guard the entrance of the back of the mountain. No one is allowed to go up the mountain. Arbor's eyelids twitched. He didn't have time to talk to them. He pulled Emolian's hand and ran towards the back of the mountain. Qi Xianxian was stunned. She quickly pulled Little Fatty and followed them, shouting, Jojo, Jojo, where are you going? Seeing that she was anxious, Emolian was just about to pick her up and speed up when he suddenly saw her body flicker, and she suddenly appeared at a place 5 kilometers away. Emolian was stunned. Then her eyes lit up. She increased her speed and appeared beside her. The two of them disappeared from Little Fatty and Qi Xuanxuan's sight in the blink of an eye. Qi Xianxian opened her small mouth and cried out, Follow me. God, even Jojo's speed couldn't keep up? The two of them appeared at the entrance of the back of the mountain. In just a few minutes, they saw the two disciples guarding the mountain path stop them. They were shaking their heads and saying something. Arbor's figure flashed and appeared in front of them. He was so fast that the other two students were dazzled. Crown Princess. The two students guarding the mountain were Zhang Mingqiu and Lu Pinwen. They were two of the 4 students who hitched a ride on the Oxhead Mountain. When the two of them saw Arbor appear at the entrance of the mountain path, They were stunned. Then they smiled. Crown Princess, Crown Prince, you're back at the school? Arbor nodded slightly and glanced at the two people who were stopped by them. Then he saw that the two people were looking back at them. One of them was an old man with white hair and a white beard. He looked kind and his eyes were very gentle. The other person was a girl around 18 or 19 years old. She looked proud and solemn. Arbor didn't say much to them. He just pointed up the mountain path. Lu Pinwen immediately put on a troubled expression and scratched his head. It's not that we don't want the two of you to go, but the dean's elder brother gave the order this morning that no one is allowed to go up the mountain. Arbor raised his eyebrows slightly. Big Brother Dean? Which saint was this? Why won't you let us go up the mountain? The red-clothed girl couldn't help but rebuke angrily. Do you think we want to go up the mountain? If it wasn't for my master suddenly thinking of a way to remedy the situation, why would we need to go up the mountain and talk things out with them? Arbor looked back at them in confusion. And you are? Who are you? The girl raised her chin proudly and looked askance at her. You're also a student of the royal school? Crown Princess, this is Sir He-Wen, whom Dean Yin invited from Medicine King Island. That's He-Wen's disciple in Ihanji. Lu Pinwen hurriedly said. Arbor looked up and down at Sir He-Wen. The dean invited the two of you to refine pills? Sir He-Wen nodded kindly and said amiably. That's right. Refine what pills? Ihanji's expression changed. She put her hands on her hips and said angrily. I asked you who you were just now, but you didn't answer. Don't you think it's rude to ask a few questions in a row? Lu Pinwen couldn't help but roll his eyes. This young lady and I was acting up again. Why did she have to show off in front of the little crown princess for no reason? She had to be careful not to be beaten to a pulp. However, the people in the school had enough of her. Chapter 3979. Just let her try her luck in front of the little crown princess. Otherwise, this woman would always think that she was the most capable person in the world. Arbor glanced at her and stared at the index finger she was pointing at him. Suddenly, he reached out and grabbed it. He pulled it back forcefully, and there was a crack sound. His Excellency He-Wen was dumbfounded. Ihanji's shriek instantly pierced through the clear sky. Lu Pinwen and Zhang Mingqiu looked at each other and felt an inexplicable sense of satisfaction. Haha, she indeed turned into dregs in minutes. Don't point your finger at me, Arbor said coldly, and then pushed her forcefully with a look of disdain. Ihanji staggered back a few steps and was supported by His Excellency He-Wen with a pale face. He-Wen looked at his beloved disciple with a pained expression and said repeatedly, Hanji, come. Give me the medicine first. The bottle of ointment that He-Wen had just taken out was snatched away by Arbor in the blink of an eye. Ihanji raised her head and glared at Arbor hatefully. She said each word coldly. You're very good. Arbor looked at her disapprovingly and tossed the ointment in his hand. If you're not capable enough, then lower your head and be a good person. Don't be arrogant everywhere. In this world, no one has the obligation to spoil you. If it weren't for the fact that Ihanji's expression was really ugly, to be honest, Zhang Mingqiu and Lu Pinwen really wanted to give the little crown princess a good round of applause. Wasn't that right? This Ihanji had been picky about everything the moment she came to the royal school. She looked down on everything. She didn't live well and didn't eat well. She felt like a fucking immortal had descended. Her ability was just a fart, but she talked a lot of nonsense. It should be left to a swift and decisive person, like the little crown princess, to discipline this unruly woman. What did she want to see that she didn't like? Great, now she had kicked an iron plate. She was the one who deserved it. Arbor snorted coldly and threw the ointment back into He-Wen's hand. He pulled emolien and turned to go up the mountain. Zhang Mingqiu pretended to stop her with a troubled expression and said pitifully, Crown Princess, what if the dean blames us? Emolien smiled faintly as he looked at his two fellow students, saying nonchalantly, you can choose. Turn a blind eye and let us go up the mountain, or we can beat you unconscious before we go up the mountain. Lu Pinwen and Zhang Qiuming looked at each other and twitched their lips at the same time. They subconsciously took 2 steps back. Good people don't fight with evil people. Can't they just give in? Xiao Mu turned her body sideways and sprinted past the 2 people. Emolian immediately followed after her. With this delay, Qi Xianxian and little Fatty had caught up. Blinking her eyes, Qi Xianxian glanced at Enai Hanji, who was groaning softly while holding her hand. She looked at her curiously. Enai Hanji's finger bones were broken, and her fingers were connected to her heart. She was in so much pain that she shed tears. Seeing Qi Xianxian looking at her curiously, she couldn't help but shout, "What are you looking at?" Qi Xianxian pursed her lips and ran over with little Fatty. Zhang Mingqiu couldn't help but shout, "Hey, classmate, you can't go up." Qi Xianxian waved her hand and said, "Anyway, letting 1 or 4 people go is the same. You're all going to be unlucky." Zhang Mingqiu blinked. "That makes sense. Master." Enai Hanji was so angry that she pulled He-Wen's hand. "The royal school treats its guests so well. I want to go up and ask that Principal Yun how he teaches his students." Chapter 3980. His Excellency He-Wen couldn't help but sigh. With his disciple's temper, she would probably only be fine on Medicine King Island with his protection. If she went out alone, who knew how many hidden losses she would suffer? Enai Hanji helped His Excellency He-Wen up, leaving Zhang Mingqiu and Lu Pinwen looking at each other again speechless. Putting 1 was the same as putting 6, it was the same as putting 1. After Arbor mobilized the spatial power in her body, her speed was equal to Prince Mo's. The two of them reached the top of the back mountain in a flash. They saw a pine forest rustling in front of them. A low and steady voice drifted into their ears along with the wind. In a moment of thought, a paradise is born. When flowers bloom and see Buddha, they hear Buddha's teachings. Buddha's wisdom is enlightened, and all living beings are enlightened. The deathly white paper money on the ground floated into the air and gently swirled in the wind. Arbor felt her heart tighten for some reason, and she bit her lips subconsciously. Unknowingly, the sound of her footsteps became slightly lower. Stepping on the pine needles, her long white robe slid across the ground, the light gauze fluttering, and the sleeves of her robe fluttered. Her gaze fell on the front, and the grave pit had been covered by a large amount of sand. The sand on the ground slowly fell to the ground with the shovel of the shovel. Apart from Yun Piaomiao, Arbor actually saw Yun Fiang and several teachers from the top academy. What were they standing there for? Who were they burying? Arbor immediately felt her mind in a mess, and it was noisy. Her gaze only stared at the grave pit with sand swirling in the air for a long time. For a moment, she felt as if her throat was blocked by something, and it was so dry that she couldn't even make a sound. Yin Piaomiao, Yin Fiang, and the others turned their heads one after another, and when they saw her, they were slightly stunned. Arbor suddenly quickened her pace and rushed in front of Yin Piaomiao and Yin Fiang. "Who are you burying? Why aren't you talking? Who are you burying? Who are you burying?" The little girl stared straight at the two with red eyes, her gaze sharp and fierce. "Talk! Talk!" she shouted at the top of her lungs. "Jojo!" Emolian quickly chased after her and reached out to pull her into his arms. He stroked her head to comfort her. "Jojo, don't be so agitated." How could he not be excited? In this inexplicable moment, the intense telepathy made her realize something. The person buried inside, perhaps it was very important to her, very important. Yun Fiang turned to look at Yin Piaomiao and frowned slightly, as if blaming him for bringing the child here. Yin Piaomiao lowered her eyes and said calmly, "Although it's painful to accept the truth, I think that Peak Master Morong would be gratified to have Jojo send her on her last journey." "What are you talking about?" Very inexplicably, Xiaomu actually felt that she was unable to control her emotions at this moment. She allowed the tears to rush out of her eyes and crash down one by one without any warning. She simply could not hold them back. He couldn't stop himself. Her vision was blurry, and her body was on the verge of collapsing. "What nonsense are you talking about? What do you mean by knowing in the underworld? Where is Morong-san? She's only missing. She's not dead." Yin Piaomiao and Yin Fiang's gazes landed on her, and they didn't say anything for a long time. "She's not dead," Arbor said resolutely. "Your master has already been laid to rest," Yin Fiang said softly. "This is the truth. Don't run away anymore." Chapter 3982. Arbor shook her head in refusal, and refused to let go of Morong Sun's hand. She turned to look at Emo Lien with tears in her eyes. She dazedly said, "Lien, Morong Sun is dead." Emo Lien nodded and grasped her icy hand. "Let's let her rest in peace, okay?" Arbor shook her head and stubbornly said, "She lied to me." Emo Lien's heart wrenched as she looked at her tear-streaked face. She reached out to touch her tear-stained face. "She's a liar." Arbor nodded. "She is a liar. She said she would always be by my side. She said that when I became successful in the future, I would protect her and let her do whatever she wanted no matter where she went. She's a liar. And she said she never lied to me." Emo Lien sighed and wiped away the glistening tears on her cheeks. "Jojo." Arbor hugged Morong Sun and sat there without moving. She sniffled and hugged Morong Sun's head, softly murmuring, "Master, I'll take you back to Holy Water Sect, okay?" "Jojo." Yin Fei sighed. "Asun has already left. Let her leave in peace." Arbor suddenly looked up and stared at him. The 1,000-year phoenix wood that Yin Piamiao was looking for was to refine the soul-returning pill for Master? Yin Fei nodded. "After the battle at Holy Water Sect, when I rushed to Holy Water Peak, your master was already at her last gasp. Not long after she returned, Yin Fei cast his eyes down. So I sealed her in an ice coffin and temporarily stabilized her soul. I did everything I could to refine the soul-returning pill to prolong her life." "Then why did you hide it from Jojo?" Emo Lien couldn't resist shouting at Yin Fei. "Don't you know how good Jojo's pill-refining skills are? Although Jojo's alchemy skills are top-notch, he's still young after all." Yin Piamiao couldn't help but interject. "The soul-returning pill is a sage-level pill. Even though we invited the divine-grade alchemist, His Excellency He Wen, to produce it, we still failed in the end. Although the soul-returning pill was successful, the quality was not pure enough, so, silly." Emo Lien shouted angrily, and lowered his head to look at his wife. The little girl looked like she had suffered a huge blow, and her tears soundlessly flowed onto Morong Sun's face. If she had asked Yun Piamiao clearly that day in the Phoenixwood Forest, or if they insisted on not giving him the herbs, they would force him to spit out the truth. Would there be a way out for today's matter? After failing to take the soul-returning pill, there was no hope at all. "Do you know?" Emo Lien took a deep breath and said, "Xiao Qiao successfully concocted a resurrection pill earlier, and already saved our royal mother." Yin Fei's eyes suddenly widened, and his body swayed slightly. Yin Piamiao looked at him in shock and instinctively denied. "That's impossible." "That's right, don't lie. That's simply impossible." And Hanji, who was clutching her severed finger, couldn't help but interject at this moment. She proudly rolled her eyes and said, "Even my master, a divine-grade pill master, couldn't refine a good quality soul-returning pill. How is that possible?" Emo Lien coldly swept a glance at her, successfully intimidating this peacock that opened her mouth, and made her timidly close her mouth. "The truth is that Mother Queen took the soul-returning pill, and has already woken up." Yin Fei's eyes widened in disbelief. Chapter 3983. His expression was a bit bitter, and he turned his head like a mechanical puppet to look at the silent Arbor. "Is that so, Jojo?" Xiaomu hugged Morong Sun and sat there in a daze. For a moment, it seemed like she couldn't hear or see who was talking to her. Isn't Jojo an Earth-level alchemist? Before we went to Phoenix Grove, Jojo had already advanced to a heaven-level alchemist. But a heaven-level alchemist is worlds apart from a god-level alchemist. Yun Piamiao could not help but weakly say. Although it was only a difference of one major realm, it was like a natural chasm that was difficult to cross, all right? Emo Lien lowered her eyes and sighed deeply. "Why do you have to keep it to yourselves when you encounter a problem, and not discuss it with others?" "It's because this heaven-level alchemist Jojo created a resurrection pill a few days ago. If you don't believe me, you can follow us back to Dragon Flame City to see my mother's current condition." Yun Xiong nearly lost his balance and was about to fall to the side. When Zhou Danjin saw this, he hastily went up with several other mentors to support him. Sir He Wen, who had heard everything from beginning to end, was shocked beyond belief. A heaven-grade alchemist had leapfrogged ranks to challenge the soul-returning pill, and had succeeded, and had really brought the person back to life? This was unheard of, all right. Let alone his disciple Naihanji, who did not believe it. Even he did not dare to believe that this was true. Then can she still be saved? Mentor Wei Wei could not help but anxiously ask. Arbor dazedly hugged Morong Sun, and did not say anything or look up. She merely lowered her head, thinking about something. Emolian knew that she was upset, so she pried her hand away and gently consoled. Jojo, let's put Master in the coffin, all right? Arbor hugged Morong Sun, unwilling to let go. She seemed to have heard Emolian talking to her, but in reality, she could not react at all. She only felt that her entire body was stiff and her mind was in a mess. It was as if there were countless voices ringing in her head, but it also felt as if there was no sound at all. Morong Sun died because she, this disciple, was useless and could not save her master. Even if he were to refine the soul-returning pill now, it would be useless. One could only take one soul-returning pill in one's lifetime. If it failed, it would be a complete failure. Otherwise, if a person could come back from the dead many times, wouldn't the heavenly Tao also become chaotic? In any case, as long as the corpse wasn't destroyed, a single pill would be enough to revive the dead, right? Arbor sat there in a daze, hugging his master without saying a word. He was in a daze. Emo Lien involuntarily panicked when she saw Morong Sun's condition. She hastily shook Morong Sun's petite body, and recklessly pried Morong Sun away from her arms. She then pulled her pitiful wifey into her embrace. Jojo? Don't be afraid, don't worry, I'm here for you. How about we seal Master's body in the star domain first? Emo Lien whispered into her ear. We'll think of another way to revive her for the rest of our lives, okay? Arbor's eyes stung. She felt like there were no more tears left for her to shed. Can we? She asked meekly. Definitely. Emo Lien nodded heavily. He hugged his wifey and asked with heartache. You don't trust hubby? Arbor shook her head. I do. Chapter 3984. At night, Emo Lien walked out of a room in Winter Forest Garden, and closed the door behind her. She glanced at Yunfei and the others who were standing in the courtyard. Let Jojo have a good rest. Emo Lien's voice was very light. The little fellow had just finished refining the soul-returning pill, and immediately rushed back to the academy. After receiving such a huge blow, she had to be given some time to recover. Yunfei opened his mouth. Suns, just leave Peak Master Morong's ice crystal coffin to us. Emo Lien interrupted Yunfei's words with an indifferent expression. But, Principal Yin, I know you have good intentions. Emo Lien interrupted him again. But you can't deny that because of this decision, you missed the best time to save Peak Master Morong. If you were willing to wait, or trust Jojo a little more, perhaps things wouldn't have become as troublesome as they are now. This little friend, Sir He-won, who had been silent and following behind the crowd, couldn't help but ask. That lady, with the standard of a heaven-grade alchemist, she really refined the soul-returning pill? How was that possible? That was a saint elixir. Even if the phoenix flower was added to the sacred medicine, refined by a divine-grade alchemist, to increase the success rate to 100%. But the pill that came out of the furnace was still of poor quality. Could a heaven-grade alchemist surpass a divine-grade alchemist in refining? Just thinking about it made it seem impossible. Emo Lien glanced at Alchemist He-won and said coldly, In this world, what we don't lack the most are geniuses. What you can't do doesn't mean that Jojo can't do. Everyone was silent. But Emo Lien's attitude of not paying any attention to Alchemist He-won angered his disciple, Naihanji. How can you say that? Naihanji couldn't help but say angrily. When they were at the back mountain of the Royal Academy, this man had swept his cold and terrifying gaze over her. That kind of attitude of not paying any attention to the master and disciple made Naihanji so angry that she couldn't help but grit her teeth. Hanji, He-won sighed softly, stopping his disciple from continuing. This old man has thought of a remedy. I hope that when the little girl wakes up tomorrow, I can discuss it with her in detail. Everyone please return. Emo Lien nodded coldly. Under the dim light of dusk, Yin Piaomiao and the others felt that the young man in front of them had clear and cold features, as cold as snow. His entire body seemed to be wrapped in a thin layer of mist that was as faint as smoke, cold, lofty, and unapproachable, knowing that the anger in his heart was unbearable. Yin Fiang and Yin Piaomiao couldn't help but close their eyes. They nodded and turned to leave the courtyard listlessly. Yun Fei didn't know how he returned to the courtyard. He sat in front of the small table in a daze, and stared at the cup of herbal tea on the table. The bitterness in his heart was unbearable. Xiaomu slept all the way until noon the next day. Lifting the thin satin covering her body, the little girl sat on the edge of the bed expressionlessly, in a daze. Yesterday's events were still vivid in his mind. After 4 years, she saw Morong Sun again, but it was in that icy coffin. Morong Sun was silently lying there without breathing. She didn't know if this counted as seeing her again. The door to the room was pushed open from the outside with a creak. Lian's slender figure stood against the light at the door. When he saw her sitting on the edge of the bed in a daze, he smiled. "You're awake?" Arbor abruptly stood up and ran a few steps before abruptly throwing herself into his arms. Chapter 3985. Lian reached out and caught her warm body. He lifted her up and rubbed against her cheek. "Why are you in a daze so early in the morning? Are you thinking about your husband?" This hug really turned all his gentleness into a drizzle, messing up his heart and blinding his eyes. What a troublesome little girl. Arbor raised her little head and blinked. She reached out and wrapped her arms around his neck, snuggling into his embrace. "I don't want to go anywhere these few days. I don't want to see anyone. Is that all right?" She just wanted to be so willful for once. She didn't want to hear, think, or see anyone. She just wanted to focus on herself for a few days. "Okay." Lian nodded slightly and patted her head. "Do whatever you want to do. There's no need to have any scruples." Yun Fei and Yun Piaomiao immediately received the news that Donglin Garden had closed its doors and refused to see anyone. He Wan, who had been turned away, could only sigh deeply when he saw the situation. "Master, they don't even want to see us. Why do we still have to come knocking on their doors? Weren't they rushing to be turned away?" And Hanji couldn't help but feel angry. "I also have an unshirkable responsibility for this matter," Hewen said in a low voice. "Master." And Hanji stomped her feet. "Your disciple said that we shouldn't have accepted this matter in the first place. Look at the situation now. Instead, we've been blamed by others." Hewen lowered his eyes slightly. In fact, he also had his own selfish motives. When he heard that the other party had gathered all the ingredients and asked him to refine the soul-returning pill, he naturally couldn't wait to come over and try. If he could successfully refine the soul-returning pill on this trip, then Hewen, would be the unparalleled #1 saint-level alchemist in the world. However, when he thought of this, Hewen couldn't help but laugh bitterly at himself. "Hanji, bring me a brush and paper." "Master." And Hanji called out indignantly. Hewen sighed and glanced at her. And Hanji had no other choice but to obediently hand over the brush and paper. Hewen drew a plant on a small stone table at the entrance and noted its name and use. Then, he folded the paper and put it into the faith. "This is what I saw in an old and tattered ancient book. I hope it will be of some help to that little friend. Master, shall we leave this lousy academy today?" Hewen glanced at her again. And Hanji pouted mischievously. "Master will return to the guest court to prepare. You can deliver the letter." "All right, Master, don't worry. Your disciple will definitely complete the mission." And Hanji nodded with a smile. After Hewen left, and Hanji snorted and pulled the paper out of the envelope with a pout. He took out a pen and added a few more leaves and a small stamen on the picture of the plant. She then chuckled and put down the pen. After putting the paper back into the envelope, she flicked her finger across the high wall and threw the letter into the envelope. "Who told you to be so arrogant? You even dared to give us the cold shoulder." And Hanji clapped her hands as she talked to herself and turned to leave triumphantly. When she thought of how Lian and Arbor dared to give her and her master the cold shoulder, she felt extremely displeased. There weren't many female disciples in the inner sect of the Medicine King Island. And Hanji had always been the moon surrounded by the stars among her fellow disciples. So when she saw Emollien's cold attitude towards her, she couldn't help but feel angry. What's there to be arrogant about? Your master ate the pill and couldn't get up. That's her bad luck. Chapter 3986. How dare they vent their anger on Medicine King Island? Did they think that she Enaihanji was a sick cat? I'll make you suffer the consequences. Enaihanji followed He-Won and left the Imperial College that day. Sitting in the air transportation spiritual artifact, Enaihanji was humming a tune in a good mood. Seeing this, He-Won could not help but smile helplessly. Hanji, did leaving the Royal Academy make you so happy? How much did she despise the Imperial College? Enaihanji stared blankly for a moment, thinking that she had gotten a little carried away. She quickly stuck out her tongue and retracted her expression, giggling as she said, "Isn't that so, Master? Once we left the Imperial Academy, I felt much more relaxed. In that place, I was always disliked by others, and I always gave them a cold shoulder. Only Master, you have a good temper and can take it." In the past, no matter which city they went to, they would always be treated with respect. It was not like the royal school, where no one paid any attention to them. He-Won shook his head helplessly and started reading the medical book in his hand again. Enaihanji asked with a smile, "Master, are we returning to Medicine King Island now?" He-Won shook his head and closed the book. He smiled at his disciple. "Let's go to the Imperial capital. The Lin family invited us to make a few spirit breakthrough pills. The income is quite good," He-Won said with a smile. The Lin family has been gaining momentum recently. Ever since they moved from Chengdu to the Imperial capital, they have steadily become one of the 6 great aristocratic families. To be able to build a good relationship with the Lin family was something worth Medicine King Island doing. Enaihanji curled her lips in disdain. What are the 6 great aristocratic families? Can they be compared to our Medicine King Island? I heard that the aristocratic families in the Imperial capital are having a hard time. They are being suppressed by the Imperial court to the point that they can't breathe. Didn't the Long family have a direct descendant who was suppressed and thrown into prison? Although the entire family managed to escape in the end, they gave up all their assets in the Imperial capital and fled with their tails between their legs. That tragic scene must have been very wretched. He-Won looked at his disciple and stroked her head. Imperial power is naturally supreme in the Imperial capital. Hanji, you have to rein in your willful temper. He-Won said helplessly. He had brought this disciple of his by his side since she was young. Rather than calling her a disciple, it would be more accurate to say that he had taken care of her like his own granddaughter. She was young, so He-Won naturally indulged her more. Furthermore, He-Won had always felt that his disciple's temperament was very pure and kind. How could he have known that she would go against his wishes and secretly change the plant drawings he had drawn? The self-righteous He-Won did not know what the consequences would be in the end if he blindly doted on this disciple. Let's not talk about the master and disciple going to the capital. In Arbor, however, they received a letter from Enaihanji. She sat there and watched silently for a while, not saying anything for a long time. Emollien frowned. She took her little hand and asked, "Jojo, could it be that this old man's reputation is false, and that his prescription is actually useless?" Arbor shook his head. "I already know this method. Using the Bodhi Revival grass as the catalyst to create the Bodhi Revival pill. I still need a few other ingredients. This prescription is an extremely ancient one," Arbor said indifferently with furrowed brows. He didn't expect He-Won to know about it. He was indeed capable. Chapter 3987. Stoneflower and the heart of a 10,000-year-old phoenix wood, Arbor said softly. I already have these 2 materials. The last one is the blood of the blue-eyed 3-headed dog. Arbor lowered his eyes and said aloofly, "This is an ancient ferocious beast. I've only seen it in ancient texts." Emollien was startled when she heard that. She lowered her eyes and pondered for a moment. "We saw the blue-eyed 3-headed dog when we were challenging the Tower of Punishment." Arbor was startled and looked at her. "You're saying you fought with it before?" Emollien shook her head. "We haven't. It's just that we saw its carving on a stone door when we were challenging the floor's checkpoint. Arbor nodded. That means the legend isn't completely absurd and baseless. This ferocious beast should exist. Arbor sighed and put down the letter in his hand. As long as this thing exists in the world, we can find it no matter how difficult it is. Mo Lian grasped his wife's hand and quietly asked, "Why are you still so gloomy when you have a solution?" Arbor shook his head. Master's soul is shattered and can't hold on for too long. And with her current body, Arbor sighed softly, she has to first nurture that shattered soul before taking the pill. Otherwise, her body wouldn't be able to endure it at all. Although the blue-eyed three-headed dog existed in the world, it would be extremely difficult to find it in a short period of time. Morong Sun's soul could only hold on for a year at most. Then Hewen's prescription isn't actually useful anymore, right? Mo Lian asked with a frown. Arbor nodded. The revival Bodhi grass he drew isn't quite right either. The revival Bodhi grass's leaves are needle-shaped, and it never blossoms nor bears fruit. Mo Lian couldn't help but laugh coldly. She wondered if this master, Hewen, was someone who fished for fame. Why would he draw a nondescript medicinal plant for Jojo to use as a reference? If Jojo had not seen the herb before, he might have followed the plant map he had given him to find the resurrection Bodhi herb. Wouldn't he? In the end, it was a waste of time and a wasted search. I saw it on the 3rd floor of the Longevity Temple on the main star. After saying that, Arbor abruptly stood up, a look of excitement appearing on his small face. How could I forget? The 2nd floor has many medicines and pills concocted by Ant Master and Master. Perhaps they can be of help to Morong Sun. She paced back and forth in front of Mo Lian with small steps, her small face flushed red from agitation. Lian, let's go in and take a look. Mo Lian nodded. The two of them left the room and entered the Longevity Temple on the main planet. Arbor pulled Mo Lian and sprinted toward the 2nd floor. Master must have concocted a pill to stabilize the soul. She pulled out a piece of frost jade with the red deity attached to it from her neck. If it doesn't work, then let's give this piece of soul-calming frost jade to Morong Sun first. The little fellow prattled on as she pulled Mo Lian to the 2nd floor. She headed straight for the rows of cabinets leaning against the wall and rummaged through them. Mo Lian helped her take down the wooden boxes placed on the top 2 floors one by one. Arbor flipped through them and took a box with a large red peony painting from Mo Lian's hands. As soon as she opened the box, a faint medicinal fragrance wafted out. Mo Lian couldn't help but inwardly click her tongue. Jojo's 2 almighty masters were truly extravagant. Every box placed on the cabinets was priceless. Chapter 3988. Arbor's eyes brightened. Soul-nurturing pill. This pill was perfect for Morong Sun to consume. It would nourish her body and imperceptibly repair her soul. At least before she found the cerulean, she could feed Morong Sun 1 pill every half a month, so that her soul would not scatter. Morong Sun was severely injured back then, and did not receive timely treatment. Hence, her condition was actually much more serious than Lian's mother's. Jojo, are you blaming Headmaster Yun for acting on his own? Mo Lian could not help but shake Morong Sun's hand when she saw Morong Sun sinking into her own contemplation while holding the pill. Arbor returned to her senses and shook her head at him. Only incompetent people would blame this and that. I don't blame anyone. She could not blame Yun Fiang for not trusting him and asking for another brilliant pill alchemist from Medicine King Island. After all, Yun Fiang's motive was good and also to save Morong Sun. Moreover, if he did not arrive in time back then and bring Morong Sun back, perhaps Morong Sun would only be left with a head like 3rd Ant Master when she arrived. Arbor could not help but shudder when she thought of this. What right did she have to blame others? It was because she was incompetent as a disciple that she could not help her master. As for Sir Hewen, he was only an outsider to them. So it was already pretty good that an outsider could do this much. Although he had no lack of selfishness in wanting to make a name for himself, how could she force an outsider to do his best for her master? Jojo. Mo Lian's heart ached inwardly, and she hugged the little girl and kissed her. You're only missing the cerulean's blood now, right? Don't worry, we'll definitely find it. Sometimes, The little girl was so sensible that it made one's heart ache. If she vented her anger on Yin Fiang and he won, perhaps she would feel better in her heart. However, she simply disdained to vent her anger on them. Morong Sun was her master, her family, so the little girl shouldered the responsibility of saving Morong Sun alone. Emo Lien lifted her chin and nuzzled her face. The Tower of Punishment was set up by heavenly law. That ferocious beast had already escaped before we escaped. At least, we didn't find it in the remaining stone doors on that floor. That means it ran away long ago. It didn't stay in the Tower of Punishment. As a guardian beast, it ran away. Do you think the heavenly axiom, with its stingy character, will let it go? Xiaomu blinked her large eyes. What Lien meant was that ferocious beast was definitely hiding in some corner of the world, and playing dead right now. Which nook and cranny are we going to find it? Xiao Qiao asked curiously. Emo Lien chuckled. We can put out a warrant for it. Xiaomu's small chin almost dropped to the ground. Put it on the wanted list? Hunt a ferocious beast? Lord Xiqiao suddenly felt that this beast was so unlucky. It had finally escaped from prison, but now it was suddenly wanted by all 3 provinces. Who could it find to reason with? Emo Lien nodded with a grin. We'll send people to Jiawei City to issue a mission. On the surface, we'll have all the assassins in the underground black market come out to find it. Secretly, we'll mobilize people from the Hidden Night Pavilion to secretly search and gather all the clues to verify their authenticity. When the time comes, there will be news. There's another possibility. Emo Lien stroked her wifey's hair and softly said, perhaps it's hiding beside some almighty figure and hiding from heavenly law. Chapter 3989. Lady Jojo blinked her eyes. If that's the case, this ferocious beast might really have found a host and stayed by that person's side to retire. Emo Lien inwardly chuckled and nodded. She looked down at the box in her hands. Let's give it to Master first. Arbor nodded and pocketed several more bottles of nutrient fluid before pulling Emo Lien out of the Hall of Longevity and flying to Paradise Planet. Ever since the star domain advanced to the God domain and the main planet opened up, the time flow on Paradise Planet was equal to the main planet's 12-fold speed. Arbor looked at the ice crystal coffin sitting on the slope of Paradise Planet and crouched next to the open coffin, feeding a soul-nurturing pill into Morong Sun's mouth. Chochio. The little treant bounced over energetically and circled around Arbor with its head. Arbor handed it a box of pills. From now on, feed one to my master every half a month. The little treant naturally nodded and complained. Those 3 little puppies have been circling Phoenix Spring all day long. Look at how they've absorbed so many good things, but their bodies haven't improved at all. They're simply wasting their divine power. Arbor was startled and then shook his head. Let them be. The little treant harumphed and stomped along with its little master while hugging the box. It then complained, they're too noisy, so I threw them into the mine. Arbor. As long as they didn't run to the main planet and destroy her little courtyard. It had nothing to do with Sir Jojo Arbor, and Emo Lien left the star domain and returned to Donglin Court's wing. Arbor glanced at the letter that fell to the ground and shook his head. It's useless. Emo Lien was a bit angry when she saw the herbs drawn on it and directly burned the paper. What god-rank pill refiner from Medicine King Island? You're simply fishing for fame, Emo Lien said angrily. Since you don't even know what that saint-grade medicinal plant looks like, why do you have to go the extra mile and draw it? Arbor's eyes flashed for a moment before he felt relieved. Don't worry about him. When are we going to Jiawei City to announce the news? Today. Emo Lien raised her eyebrows and took out her communication jade talisman. Prince Mo's spies could be said to be all over the world. He even had spies in Song Prefecture's Phoenix Emperor City. How could he not have spies in a no-man's land like Jiawei City? After releasing the news, Emo Lien turned her head and winked at Arbor. She smiled and said, Jiawei City will soon be in chaos because of this news. What are your conditions? 100 million spirit coins. Xiaomu swallowed her saliva. Wow, it really is His Highness the Crown Prince, who is filthy rich and overbearing. The bait he set out was so enticing. So how could it not attract so many of Jiawei City's warriors? who scrambled to be the first to come out in search of ferocious beasts. 2 days later, not to mention the entire Jiawei city, even the imperial court of the upper 3 prefectures was shocked by this news. A mysterious person offered a sky-high price of 100 million spirit coins to buy a living cerulean 3-headed dog. All the mercenary teams and adventurer teams on the continent were in an uproar. Everyone began to go to the various adventure holy lands together to search for traces of this ferocious beast. Chaotic news flooded the channels set up by the Hidden Night Pavilion like snowflakes. 20 days later, Dragon Flame City, in the newly opened Lin family restaurant. Many diners were talking about this big event that shook the 3 prefectures. Chapter 3990. Arbor and Emolienne stayed in the academy to cultivate in seclusion, and did not see anyone. They only chatted with Yin Fiang and Yun Piaomiao before leaving the academy. Speaking of saving Morong Sun, Arbor naturally hoped that he would be given full authority to handle this matter. Yun Fiang was deeply affected, so he naturally could not stop the little girl. He only told her to tell him whatever she needed, and dejectedly left Donglin Court. Although the little girl did not blame him at all from beginning to end, he still could not get over the hurdle of self-blame in his heart. It was not impossible for him to walk out from this blow. As long as Morong Sun woke up, the knot in everyone's hearts would naturally be completely resolved. I will definitely save Master. Arbor secretly said this in his mind. 20 days later, Arbor and Emolienne leisurely returned to Dragon Flame City. When they arrived at Kaidai Veranda's entrance, they discovered that the Lin family restaurant had opened across the street at some point in time. Arbor called out to Manager Hu, and Manager Hu immediately ran out and beamed from ear to ear. Crown Prince, Crown Princess, you're here. Quickly invite them in. Arbor saw that his Kaidai veranda was still packed with guests. When he saw the diners all standing up to greet him, he waved his hand and said, "No need to be so courteous. Sit down and continue eating." Everyone hastily thanked him, before sitting down with a smile. Arbor and Emolienne did not disturb them, and followed Manager Hu to a private room on the 2nd floor. On the way there, Arbor purposely looked at the rooms on the 2nd floor. He saw that the rooms were already occupied by guests, and there was not a single empty room. It was clear that business was still flourishing. It was actually almost past mealtime right now, so other restaurants could not compare to having such good business. Arbor sat down and scooted over to the Crown Prince, who was fanning himself, to enjoy the cool breeze. He also asked curiously, "Old Hu, the Lin family restaurant that opened across the street can't be the Lin family I'm thinking of, right? Why did they name it so casually?" Old Hu was attentively entertaining the two of them, asking the waiters to quickly serve up some of their signature dishes. She rolled her eyes and said, "Who else could it be? Wasn't it the Lin family from Rong City? Hehe, they've been fighting with our Kaidai loft for 7 days now." Speaking of this, shopkeeper who had a belly full of anger. Every day, there are special discounts, and they even go around the streets to recruit people. Hey, they even found a few good-looking young men from Spring Full House to flirt with those ants. He recruited all of them. Emolienne, looking at Old Hu's belly full of anger, he probably had been holding it in for more than a day or two. "But I saw it just now. Our business is still good." Of course. When Old Hu mentioned this, his face was filled with pride and joy as he said, "Can other people eat our Kaidai veranda's dish, the holy rice? Even if she pulled a few naked people over to lie in front of their door, they might not be able to compete with us." Old Hu spoke sneakily, only to realize that the Crown Prince glanced at him indifferently after he finished speaking. He hurriedly raised his hand to slap his mouth and chuckled. This old servant misspoke. How could he say such vulgar words in front of the little Crown Princess? No wonder the Crown Prince glared at him. As they spoke, they heard the sound of gongs and drums from across the street. The little Crown Princess excitedly leaned against the window to take a look. The scenery on the other side looks a little familiar. Chapter 3991. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, purple. 7 figures that were as thin as lightning stood at the entrance of the Lin family restaurant, immediately causing the young ladies and young wives on the street to scream. Yeah, 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 whoa, 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 whoa. A bunch of ear-piercing sounds instantly rushed into Arbor's ears. The little fellow subconsciously covered her ears with her hands, but her gaze fell on the 7 figures in front of the restaurant across the street. She seemed to be deep in thought. Haha. Prince Mo's cool laughter suddenly sounded in her ears. Very nice to see? Sir Jojo turned around and looked at him blankly. Who? Emol Yen pursed her lips, secretly suppressing the urge to laugh. Red, orange, yellow, green, indigo, purple. After parting last year and meeting again today, don't you think it's nice to see them? The little girl turned her head and looked at the 7 figures in front of the Lin family restaurant. I know them. This time, it was Prince Mo's turn to be a little stunned. That's right. The little fellow's memory of miscellaneous matters was not very deep. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but secretly laugh. Humph, of course he wouldn't remind her who these people were. At the entrance of the restaurant next door, there was a 50% discount sign. It led the passing women and young ladies into the restaurant, making a lot of noise. Arbor propped up her little chin with one hand and asked shopkeeper who doubtfully, Old who, do they do this every day? Isn't that so? Speaking of this Lin family restaurant, Old who had countless things to complain about. What's the use of lowering the price every day? Can they attract business with just a few beauties? Shopkeeper who said angrily, if the quality of the dishes doesn't improve, people will still only recognize our Kaidai restaurant. Arbor nodded with her chin in her hand. Suddenly, she tugged at Emolien's sleeve. Look at that. Emolien reluctantly looked over and saw that there was a sudden commotion at the entrance of the Lin family restaurant. A familiar-looking woman found another person on the street to put on a show of martial arts and suddenly started fighting. As they fought, the flower stand that was originally set up at the entrance was suddenly pushed to the ground. The bouquet of flowers scattered all over the ground. The 7 beauties also cried out and scattered in all directions. Arbor rolled his eyes and couldn't bear to watch. This idiot Mu Dongni picked a fight with someone on the street and made the Mu family lose face. Just as she was about to close the window and stop watching this farce, she suddenly saw a green-clothed beauty among the 7 beauties looking up at her. This was nothing much, but the beauty's eyes suddenly lit up. She waved at him, and even pulled the other 6 beauties beside her. The 7 of them looked at her in unison. Immediately, they stretched out their claws and waved them at her, shouting at her excitedly. Xiaomu creased her brows and looked at them in bewilderment. What the hell? These people did look familiar, but she couldn't remember where she had seen them before. On the other side, Mu Dongni was gradually getting angry with that woman. Suddenly, she turned to look in her direction and was stunned for a moment. Suddenly, she received a fierce slap on the face and immediately yelled hatefully, Gu Daozhen, you dare to slap this old lady's face? You must be tired of living. Arbor looked coldly at Mu Dongni, who had overstepped her bounds, and said grumpily, send a message to old Master Mu and have him send someone to take her back. As soon as her voice fell, one of the women fiercely pulled out a 7-foot-long sword and stabbed at Mu Dongni. Chapter 3992. Fuck, these 2 people were viciously brawling on the streets. Not only did their fight hurt the eyes, but they were even pointing their swords at each other now. What kind of deep-seated hatred was this? Did they need to do this? Arbor flicked her finger, and a jade porcelain wine cup bounced off Gu Daozhen's long sword with a whoosh as swift as a clap of thunder. The latter only felt her wrist go numb, and the sword in her hand immediately fell to the ground with a clang. Prince Mo couldn't resist facepalming. He swiftly reached out to grab it, but he only caught a strand of his wifey's sleeve that floated past his fingers. The little girl directly jumped down from Kaidai Pavilion's window and flew to Mu Dongni and Gu Daozhen. Mu Dongni looked back and scrambled to her side, shouting in alarm, Niece! Beat her up! Beat this stinking, shameless old hag to death! When Gu Daozhen heard this, her face instantly darkened, and she turned to yell at Mu Dongni, Nothing good comes out of a filthy mouth. Who's an old hag? You're the old hag. Don't forget, you're a year older than me. Eldest niece, look at this old hag. She actually said that about us. Mu Dongni was just about to howl when the little stoic glared at her icily. She suddenly felt like she didn't dare to howl anymore. Useless thing. Arbor swept her a disdainful glance before her gaze landed on Gu Daozhen, sizing her up. Gu Daozhen was also in a very sorry state after fighting with Mu Dongni just now. Not only was her left eye bruised, but the corner of her mouth was also scratched by Mu Dongni's sharp nails. No wonder she was so angry that she drew her sword and wanted to stab Mu Dongni to death. Arbor restrained her temper and asked with a cold expression, "What is it?" Mu Dongni immediately felt like she had found a backer, so she quickly crawled over and wailed, "It's all because of this old hag who maliciously tried to steal my Meng Meng. Meng Meng is mine." Meng Meng? Arbor only felt that Mu Dongni's crying was an eyesore, so he impatiently yelled at her. "What are you crying for? Speak properly." Mu Dongni immediately stopped sobbing and pretended to wipe her tears. She stole a glance at Gu Daozhen and said in a low voice, "Gu Daozhen clearly knew that I wanted to redeem Meng Meng, but she still jumped out to compete with me. Tell me, how evil is this old woman?" Arbor asked expressionlessly, "Who is Dreamy?" I know. That beauty in green ran to the little stoic's side with a grin. "He's talking about one of our spring house's top young brothers, Fan Meng." Arbor cast a sideways glance at the green-clothed beauty before turning his cold little face to Mu Dongni. "Didn't you say you wanted to redeem the top performer of the Despondent Pavilion a while ago? What's his name again?" Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Kaixio, who had caught up, could not help but twitch the corner of her mouth. She stepped forward and whispered, "The ace of the Qin family troupe, Brother Rong." "Oh." Arbor nodded expressionlessly. She turned to point at Mu Dongni and grumpily reprimanded, "How can you be so fickle?" Mu Dongni looked dumbfoundedly at this eldest niece of hers. It wasn't good to talk about this here. Right on the side, the one-eyed Gu Daozhen couldn't help but chuckle and gloat. She's not just fickle, she simply loves whoever she sees. Mu Dongni's face darkened, and she angrily kicked Gu Daozhen. "What nonsense are you spouting? Who's fickle?" Chapter 3993. Ever since I saw my Meng Meng. Mu Dongni revealed a dreamy and blissful expression. "I knew I found my true love. My heart belongs to someone. I can definitely grow old with my Meng Meng in the future. I'll destroy whoever dares to snatch Meng Meng from me." Mu Dongni bared her teeth and turned to roar at Gu Daozhen. She then scrambled over to Qiaomu and tugged at the corner of her skirt. "Eldest niece, you must help me. You must help me. Second great aunt." Mu Dongni turned her head and saw Zhanju rushing over with 7 to 8 elderly nannies and pulling her up from the ground in a flurry. "Second great aunt, don't make a fuss. Your matter has already reached the elderly sir's ears. Hurry and come back with us." I'm not going back. Mu Dongni yelled angrily and stretched out her leg to kick Gu Daozhen. "Gu Daozhen, I'm telling you, you're not allowed to compete with me at the spring gathering tomorrow night." Gu Daozhen gave her a "who cares about you" expression and glared at her. "Eldest niece, help me. Help me, eldest niece." Mu Dongni shrieked as she kicked her leg. Arbor expressionlessly watched her figure being dragged far away. She took out a handkerchief and leisurely wiped her clothes where she had grabbed. She turned around and burned the handkerchief to ashes. Everyone was stupefied. How can someone from the Mu family be this stupid? The little stoic shook her head and was about to move when someone reached out to stop her. "What is it?" Arbor glanced indifferently at the man in green blocking her path. That guy waved his hand in front of her and said with a grin, "Little stoic, long time no see. If you're free tomorrow, why don't you come visit our spring gathering pavilion?" MHM. The man in blue also ran up and blinked his large eyes at her. "Our pavilion is holding a spring gathering tomorrow. There will be all kinds of good performances. It's going to be lively." The little stoic faced the crowd with a stoic expression. "I'm not free." Before she could open her mouth, a deep voice drifted over from behind her, directly rejecting the offer on her behalf. Qiaomu blinked, but before she could turn around, she was pulled back into a certain person's embrace by a hand. The green-clothed beauty curled her lips and stole a glance at Emolian with an aggrieved expression. "This young master, why are you so fierce?" Emolian glared fiercely at him. This bastard actually dared to lure his wife to such a foul place like the spring-filled house. The little stoic turned to look at her husband's huff and puff, and tugged at his finger. Let's go home. Her husband didn't seem to like the colors red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. If that was the case, then Jojo did not want to see them. In any case, they weren't familiar with each other. It was just a chance encounter. Husband, I remember now. We also encountered these people when we were on Seacone Planet, right? Who would have thought that a small gambling den could actually operate in the upper 3 prefectures? The boss of this whatever spring house was probably a rather impressive figure. Emolian looked down at her and said with a grin, "That's right. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, blue, and purple. Aren't they beautiful?" Arbor quickly shook his head and swiftly added, "They're not as beautiful as Duanyu." Prince Mo's handsome face completely darkened. What was going on with his wifey, always using Duanyu as a standard? Could this habit be changed? Chapter 3994. Speaking of Duanyu, Jojo had been busy searching for the blue-eyed three-headed dog's blood recently, because of Master's matter. Aside from cultivating in seclusion in the academy, the two devoted themselves to the matter of the blood. Duanyu's matter had indeed been delayed. Emolian grasped Arbor's hand. Something happened on Duanyu's side. Arbor was startled. What happened? Emolian organized her thoughts, and planned to make a long story short to tell her wife about Duanyu's side. However, she saw Hao Fei rushing over with her entourage, and visibly sighing in relief when she saw the two of them. Hao Fei dismounted from her horse and strode forward. She quickly cupped her hands and greeted. "Greetings to Crown Prince and Crown Princess. You two have finally returned. Crown Princess, Heavenly Pill Auction received a letter from Songzhou's Prince Chen more than 10 days ago. The various physicians in the auction repeatedly examined the items Prince Chen sent, and did not find any problems." Emolian and Arbor took the reins from the manservant, and followed Hao Fei to Heavenly Pill Auction. At the entrance of the Lin family's restaurant, the 7 flowers looked at each other. Their bright eyes looked at each other. On the other side, the young couple soon arrived at the southern part of the city. The two of them followed Hao Fei through the door, and happened to bump into Fairy Huanghe. Huanghe's eyes brightened, and she exclaimed in pleasant surprise, "Jojo, you're back." Arbor nodded and jogged over. She patted her and asked, "Little Huanghe, how have you been recently?" "Pretty good." She would refine pills in her free time, and occasionally enter closed-door cultivation to cultivate. Her days were too comfortable. Most importantly, she had someone to chat with. Xiaomu nodded upon hearing this, and was led inside by the two people. Soon, Fairy Yellow Crane accompanied her into a small, independent alchemy room. In this small alchemy room, in addition to the alchemy furnace that was half the height of a person, there was also a bamboo rack that was used to store medicinal herbs. Fairy Yellow Crane took down an item wrapped in a square handkerchief from the top of the shelf. She carefully opened it, and used a pair of tweezers to take out a fingernail. Arbor's face sank. He summoned the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron, took the fingernail, and began to examine it. Not long after, Fairy Yellow Crane accompanied Arbor out of the pill room. Prince Emma was sitting in the inner hall, quietly drinking tea. When he saw the two of them come out, he stood up and asked, "How is it?" Yellow Crane Fairy clenched her fists angrily. Jojo found out. It's the poison of the soul-devouring flower. This substance is completely colorless and odorless when mixed with the rouge and powder used by the human body. If it is applied for a long time, it will imperceptibly poison the person. Only at a certain point in time, we can use the primer to completely detonate it, and the person will die silently. Fairy Yellow Crane said angrily, "Too despicable. This soul-devouring flower was completely useless against Xiozha. It can only bully mortal women." Emolian silently lowered her eyes. It was not important whether it was useful to other people. It was enough that it could strike a blow to Duanyu. "If it is applied for a long time?" Emolian asked softly. Could it be that they were targeted the moment they returned to Tsang province? And Duanyu's mother was poisoned? Seeing Arbor's silence, Fairy Yellow Crane nodded and said, "It should be so. If one ingests a little bit of this thing every day, Its medicinal properties are not enough to take a person's life. It would take at least half a year or more. Human hearts are vicious. Fairy Yellow Crane clenched her fists. Chapter 3995. Fairy Yellow Crane shook her head and sighed. Whose path can a mortal woman obstruct? The little stoic's small face was grim, and her eyes were brimming with bone-chilling chilliness. That guy must have been feeling terrible recently, right? She could empathize with the loss of his closest mother. How is he doing right now? Emolienne pulled her small hand and said softly, I've already sent people to inquire. That guy has been staying on Lonely Mountain's Imperial Mausoleum this past month. However, I heard that the Zhangzhou Emperor suddenly fainted during a royal court session the day before yesterday. His health, however, is deteriorating with each passing day. Empress Liu, the second prince, and the third prince's mother are fighting fiercely in the harem. Emolienne said aloofly as she set down the teacup in her hand. The royal court is also in a constant state of turmoil. The current Zhangzhou has Eagle City's zombies causing chaos on the outside, while the courtiers and palace concubines are fighting endlessly on the inside. I'm afraid that once the Zhangzhou Emperor dies, Ming Province will make a move against them. It was impossible for him not to take a bite out of such a big piece of fat meat. Arbor paced back and forth in front of Emolienne with her small paws behind her back. How about we make a trip there? Emolienne shook her head. We shouldn't go and add to the chaos. Duan Yu will definitely make a move soon. We only need to send Zhangzhou's spies to secretly cooperate. If we head to Zhangzhou right now, we will definitely leave some traces. However, if someone catches hold of this and accuses him of treason and collusion with the Divine Province, it will be very unsightly. Arbor sat down next to him in a huff. Then we can't do anything? Of course not. A cold glint flitted through Emolienne's eyes, and he gripped his wife's small paws with a grin. We can add fuel to the fire. Let them fall into complete chaos. Your Majesty. Great Eunuch Laifu ran over in a panic, nearly bumping into a floor-to-ceiling screen as he stumbled along the way. What is it? The Zhangzhou Emperor looked up with a slightly pale face. Left Prime Minister Wu Yong and General Zhou request an audience. Recently, the Zhangzhou Emperor's health had been deteriorating day by day. It seemed to be an illness that had suddenly broken out. But in fact, the eunuchs and palace maids who were close to His Majesty all knew very well. 2 years ago, His Majesty's health had already deteriorated. He had been injured by the poison a few years ago, and now that this body could no longer suppress it, it suddenly erupted. It was normal for him to faint during the court session, so he didn't have enough time. Zhangzhou's Emperor Rong Yuan coughed lightly and waved his hand. Let them in. Left Prime Minister Wu Yong and Great General Zhou Chao quickly walked in and bowed. Your Majesty, there's an urgent report from the border. The Divine Land has suddenly mobilized 1 million troops and stationed them in the border stronghold of Fengyang City. The Tsang Prefecture Emperor was stunned, and then his eyes widened in disbelief. He knew that if he were to fall ill or even die, someone would definitely make a move. But what he expected was that the Underworld Prefecture would make a move. The surrounding small tribes might want to eat a piece of meat from the Tsang Prefecture and get a share of the profits. But he never expected that the Divine Land would make the first move. Cough, cough, cough. The Tsang Prefecture Emperor's expression suddenly changed and he coughed. Who is it? Is it Emo Luxing? General Zhou hurriedly shook his head. I heard that the order was given by the Crown Prince of the Divine Land. Recently, the Empress has just woken up, and the Emperor of the Divine Land doesn't have the time to care about other things. The Crown Prince is now handling the court affairs on his behalf. Chapter 3996. This brat is really bold. The Tsang Prefecture Emperor was so angry that he almost couldn't catch his breath and passed out. Your Majesty. General Zhou cupped his fists with a calm face. Please allow this subject to lead the troops to the border of Fengyang City. The Tsang Prefecture Emperor pinched the corners of his eyes tiredly and nodded. Pass down the order. Zhou Chao is to lead 500,000 troops to Fengyang City first. The Tsang Prefecture Emperor suddenly coughed loudly and patted the table beside him. He turned to ask Lai Fu, "Is fourth prince still at Lonely Mountain? Go and summon him back." Reporting, the imperial bodyguard led the Featherwood Guard commander and the magistrate in a hurry. Before Lai Fu could report, he hurriedly knelt down and saluted. "Reporting to your majesty. At 10 o'clock in the morning today, bandits of unknown origin rushed into Minister Lu's residence and killed everyone on sight. By the time the Featherwood Guard rushed over, all the bandits had already disappeared without a trace. However, the entire Phoenix Emperor City's 4 gates are now under the control of the Featherwood Guard's army." The Tsang Prefecture Emperor was shocked, and his expression instantly changed. Bandits of unknown origin? Broke into Minister Lu's residence? In broad daylight, right inside the Phoenix Arch City? Were they so insolent? How could there be such insolent bandits? Who would believe this if they told others about it? Who would think it was normal? The Tsang Prefecture Emperor pursed his lips and said coldly, "What's the result of the investigation?" The Featherwood Guard commander's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He exchanged glances with the imperial capital magistrate and wiped his sweat at the same time. He said in a low voice, "Reporting to your majesty, the result of the investigation is that the bandits," bang. Rong Yuan casually picked up a jade cup and smashed it at their feet. Everyone was so scared that their faces turned pale, and they kept their mouths shut. Bandits, bandits, bandits. Where did these bandits come from? How could they be so bold? Do you really believe what you're saying? The imperial capital magistrate bowed and said while dripping with sweat, Your majesty, please allow us to report. It's this humble subject and the others who did not do our job well. Please, your majesty, give us a few more days. This humble subject and the others will definitely investigate this matter to the end." Just as they were talking, a sharp cry came from outside the palace and entered the palace through the door. A young eunuch came in with a bitter face and reported, "The empress is outside crying and begging to see his majesty. Your servants can't stop him at all." The Zhangzhou emperor's face darkened. "Send the empress back to the palace first. I'll be there later." After the eunuch left, the crying outside became louder, which annoyed the Zhangzhou emperor. He rubbed his forehead and said in a tired voice, "Let her in." After a short while, Empress Lu rushed in with a pale face. She immediately prostrated herself on the ground and cried, "Your Majesty, please uphold justice. Prince Chun, Rongli is insane. For the sake of your own selfish desires, you actually destroyed my entire family. I beg your Majesty to uphold justice for this concubine's family." Left Prime Minister Wu Yong said indifferently, "Does the Empress have any basis for her words?" Great General Zhou Chao also nodded. "If you don't have any evidence, it's better not to speak carelessly." "Your Majesty," Empress Lu threw herself in front of the Zhangzhou Emperor and cried with snot and tears, "Your Majesty, except for Prince Chun, who would do such a crazy thing to the Prime Minister's mansion in the near future?" Empress Lu said angrily, "Your Majesty, I request to punish this evil bandit and bring justice to our Lu family." "Your Majesty, nearly 10,000 refugees have gathered at the city gate and are crying for justice." Chapter 3997. At the same time, a deputy commander of the Featherwood Guard also hurried into the palace, bringing with him a piece of shocking news. The 6 bandits who broke into the Lu estate to commit murder and arson had all surrendered themselves. Empress Lu's vision darkened when she heard this, and her face contorted as she exclaimed, "This empress wants to see which bandits are so audacious to break into my prime minister's estate to commit murder." She was certain that this matter was related to Duanyu. However, those murderous bandits suddenly came to admit their guilt. What exactly was going on? Empress Lu speculated in her mind, but she was troubled by the lack of evidence to accuse Duanyu. It was obvious that this whole thing had been planned from the beginning. From the moment the bandits broke into their Lu estate and slaughtered everyone in their estate to the moment the culprit came out to admit his guilt, the timing of everything was perfect. They stirred up a storm in the entire imperial capital. Yet they wanted to calm it down all of a sudden. Who gave you the guts to toy with this empress like this? Empress Lu's sharp nails dug into her palms, and her eyes revealed a sharp and ruthless glint. Because a large number of refugees had rushed to the capital's city gates, the Tsang province's emperor could only send Wu Yong to investigate. This matter's eruption was strange and bizarre. However, the situation continued to develop in a strange direction, and it wasn't something that she, as the master of the imperial harem, could control. On the second day of the court assembly, several impeachment memorials were presented to the Tsang province's emperor. They were all impeaching Prime Minister Lu's family for seizing land and occupying forests on the outskirts of the capital, causing nearly 10,000 townspeople to become homeless and destitute. Was this matter very strange? Of course it wasn't. Which high official or wealthy merchant in the capital didn't purchase a few farmsteads or fields near the capital's outskirts? However, Prime Minister Lu's family had driven away a large number of residents because of the matter of seizing land. Whether there were nearly 10,000 refugees or not, it was obvious that no one wanted to investigate this specific number. In reality, even if the other officials had also done this kind of immoral thing, they all went with the flow and directly pushed the blame for the nearly 10,000 refugees onto Prime Minister Lu's family. In any case, the dead couldn't testify, right? Could it be that you, Prime Minister Lu, could crawl out of the ground and cry for justice? Impeachment memorials fell on the emperor's desk like snowflakes. Everyone was filled with righteous indignation and criticized Prime Minister Lu's family. They accused the government of forcing the people to rebel, of forcing them to be bandits in the mountains, and of forcing them to kill their entire family in the middle of the night. This was completely because the commoners couldn't live anymore. Therefore, they could only think of such an extreme method. They chose 6 men of sacrifice to kill Prime Minister Lu and his family, although this matter was full of doubts. For example, why did it erupt so suddenly? How did the tens of thousands of refugees live in the past? Why did they have to choose to expose this matter at this time? What made Empress Lu's vision go dark the most was that the 6 bandits who had pleaded guilty had actually all written confessions and blood letters the night before, and had all committed suicide in the prison. The blood letter was presented to the emperor by a high official of the Ministry of Justice during the morning court session. The great emperor read the bloody letter and scolded the Lu family. After the court, he rushed to the empress palace and scolded her. Empress Lu didn't sleep last night, and today she was scolded so miserably by the emperor. That night, she was so angry that she couldn't eat a mouthful of food. Imperial noble consort Qing is here. The eunuch's voice made Empress Lu, who was in tears, suddenly stand up from the couch. Chapter 3998. Empress Lu stood so fast that she couldn't help but shake violently. She felt darkness in front of her and almost fell down. The chief maid beside her quickly reached out to support her and said in a trembling voice, "Your Highness." Imperial noble consort Qing walked in gracefully, stroked her slightly bulging belly, and looked at the embarrassed woman in front of her with a faint smile. This lowly medicine woman actually climbed up to the position of imperial noble consort from a small noble lady in just a few months. Now she was really the first person after the empress. Empress Lu wouldn't believe that there was no one who helped her behind the scenes. "Are you here to laugh at me?" "Of course not." Imperial noble consort Qing lowered her eyebrows slightly and looked gentle and graceful. "I heard that something happened in your family. I think you must be suffering these days." Thinking of the condensed fragrance pill that His Majesty gave me the other day, I specially sent it to you. It can help to refresh your mind and replenish your strength. Empress Lu's face was slightly pale, and she stared at a small box handed over by the maid behind Imperial noble consort Qing. Suddenly, he stretched out his hand and slapped the box to the ground. The box fell heavily on the ground with a muffled sound. Imperial noble consort Qing shook her head with a regretful expression. What a good condensed fragrance pill. Just like that, he was ruined by his elder sister. What a pity. Get out. Get out of here. Empress Lu pointed in the direction of the door and scolded harshly. Imperial noble consort Qing bowed slowly and sighed. "I can understand that you are in a bad mood. Since you want me to leave, I will leave. I just hope you can take good care of yourself. After all, these wonderful days had just begun. Imperial noble consort Qing turned around, and there was a faint cold light in her eyes. They are all against me, all against me. Empress Lu shrieked, and pulled the antique shelf next to her. The dazzling collection of porcelain fell to the ground with a crashing sound. Her prime minister's mansion was gone. The whole Lu family was killed by a group of bandits. Wasn't this a very funny thing? The Lu family was not a small family. There were dozens of god state masters in the Lu family. Just like that, they were all silently killed at home in the wee hours of the morning. How was it possible for a mere 6 bandits to do that? In order to eradicate the Lu clan, they would need at least 100 people to infiltrate the Lu clan and kill them. But she had no evidence, no evidence. The 6 bandits had also left blood letters, saying that they were dead, and had taken all the blame. If this matter was handed over to the Ministry of Justice to investigate in detail, they would certainly be able to find more clues to refute the testimony of the 6 bandits. However, as the refugees flooded into the capital, a huge commotion broke out. The officials in the capital were all in danger. From top to bottom, they were all busy thinking of countermeasures to appease the common people. Who would have the time to investigate the matter of her Lu family? Moreover, who was the Lu family? Now she was like a rat on the street that everyone wanted to beat up. Even the capital made up nursery rhymes, scolding the Lu family for taking advantage of the Empress's power and abusing the villagers. They directly scolded Empress Lu as well. Even today, during the morning court session, there were officials who took advantage of the situation and handed the great emperor a memorial to pray for the people to abolish the Empress. Empress Lu's eyes were red, and she said harshly, "Go and summon all my secret guards." "Greetings, Your Majesty." Chapter 3999. Go investigate. Investigate clearly what that punk Prince Chun did these past few days. Empress Lu widened her bloodshot eyes and screamed malevolently like a malicious spirit. Lonely Mountain's imperial mausoleum Duanyu, who was guarding the thatched cottage and accompanying his mother on Lonely Mountain, was dressed in white. His long hair fluttered in the wind, and his figure was visibly thinner than a month ago. A shadowy figure followed behind him like a shadow. Duanyu took 2 steps forward and sprayed water with a flower pot. Then he quickly followed suit. Whenever Duanyu took 2 steps to the side, he would also take 2 steps to the side. He followed closely behind Duanyu. Duanyu was a bit annoyed from following, so he tossed the flower pot aside and turned to look at him. Stay 3 feet away from me." Hidden guard shook his head vigorously. "Your Highness, you fainted in the inner courtyard 3 days ago. Leader ordered me to stay within 3 steps of you from now on." Duanyu rubbed his forehead and explained patiently, "That was an accident. He really wasn't that weak. It was just that day when he recalled that day's incident." Duanyu's lips couldn't help but sneer. That old man wanted to take over his body while he was feeling down. How could a sparrow occupying a dove's nest be so beautiful? He thought that he blamed himself for being indecisive in the past, which caused the people around him to suffer so much. If he had been ruthless to that woman and killed her from the start, his mother wouldn't have died, and he wouldn't be all alone. So kindness and whatnot were sometimes unnecessary. It would cause the death of the people closest to you. So that day, when the old man threatened him again, he smiled and started roasting him with silver-white flames. He didn't care that he might be his ancestor, his great-grandfather, someone he had to respect. He only knew that the power of the Devil Emperor was his now. Since he inherited the bloodline of the Devil Emperor, then he had to integrate it into his body and truly transform it into something that belonged to him and could be used by him. So there was no need for an old man like you to exist anymore. He roasted that old man, but because they were connected by blood, he also suffered greatly. That was why he suddenly fainted in the inner courtyard. He really poked a hornet's nest this time. Little Kuzi, Yuanzhen, and the others all thought that he had fainted again due to excessive grief. The secret guards also anxiously followed behind him, not willing to leave him alone. How troublesome! That old man was only half roasted, and had not completely melted yet, Your Highness. Dr. Tu, who had hurried over, bowed respectfully to His Highness from afar. She knew that His Highness didn't like people getting too close to him, so she stood far away. There's news. Although he lived on a lonely mountain and spent every day with his mother, he still sent out many spies. He knew very well that Jojo and Emolian had returned to the royal school, but he did not know the details. The heavenly elixir store in the Divine Land has sent a letter. There should be a result. Dr. Tu lowered his eyes and passed the letter to the shadow guard. After receiving it, Ing presented it to Duanyu. Duanyu first read what was written on that letter. The poison analysis was detailed and meticulous, so even a layman could understand it at a glance. Then he poured out a small ring from the envelope. A small white paper floated out, and there was only a line of small words on it. Duanyu, take good care of yourself. There was no signature, but he knew who it was. He picked up the small silver spatial ring and took a deep look at it in the direction of the sunlight. Chapter 4000. So bright. It was as if that beam of sunlight had passed through that tiny ring and directly shot into his heart. The pressing warmth seemed to be able to instantly disperse much of the haze and poisonous miasma. Lonely Mountain was cold all around, but he couldn't feel much coldness. Right now Duanyu gripped that ring with an indifferent expression. Physician Tu eagerly gazed at Duanyu from afar, with a curious and frenzied expression. Master, give me a definite answer. Duanyu put away the ring and the small white letter into his sleeve, before handing the antidote letter to Ing. Ing returned the letter to Physician Tuesday. Physician Tu quickly skimmed through the letter. After he finished reading, his eyes lit up as he looked at Duanyu. He couldn't help but sigh. Amazing. You really could tell. Soul-devouring flowers couldn't be considered a poison at all. Some female cultivators even specially used them to concoct perfume. This was because the perfume concocted from the soul-devouring flower was very refreshing and pleasant. Furthermore, it had no side effects on cultivators' bodies. However, just as the letter said, the other party very shrewdly found such a common yet very useful item, and specially used it to deal with Her Highness Noble Consort Duan, who was a normal person. It didn't matter how rare or precious the item was. It only mattered that it was useful to a mortal woman. If it weren't for the fact that the pill refiner had a profound understanding of pharmacology and was very proficient in all kinds of medicinal herbs in the world, who would associate it with such a common soul-devouring flower in such a short time? Physician Tu carefully folded the letter and put it into an envelope before respectfully presenting it with both hands. Duanyu also put the letter into his sleeve before looking at the silent woman standing on the side. Is there anything else? Physician Tu said with a conflicted expression. Master, this subordinate wants to go to the Divine Province's Heavenly Pill Hall to study for a month. In order to stay by Master's side in the future and be able to take better care of him, Tu Xiuxiu felt that her decision was definitely correct. Otherwise, with her current half-baked ability, she might not be able to take care of Master if someone else extended a vicious hand to him. An extremely faint smile appeared on Duanyu's lips. Go if you want. I'll write a letter for you to bring over. Yes, Tu Xiuxiu nodded solemnly. She cupped her fists and bowed. Thank you for your tolerance, Master. Lil Kuzi and Aunt Yuanzhen ran over in small, quick steps. After bowing, Xiao Kuzi panted as he said, Your Highness, the Emperor is urgently summoning you back. A cold and sharp glint flashed through Duanyu's eyes. He didn't say anything and just nodded his head. Seeing little Kuzi staring at him blankly, he could not help but say helplessly, Go and pack your luggage. We're going down the mountain this afternoon. Xiao Kuzi instantly cried tears of joy. He looked at Duanyu and stammered, Your Highness, is this true? You really must be willing to go down the mountain. All right, this servant will go and prepare. He couldn't be blamed for being stupid, but His Highness was too stubborn. During this period of time, it was unknown how many people had tried to persuade His Highness to leave the mountain. Even left Prime Minister Wu Yong had come to see him once at night. However, he was still unable to persuade His Highness to change his mind. A storm was brewing in the royal court. Due to His Majesty's illness, the second prince and third prince were in a state of chaos. On the other hand, that crown prince appeared to be very calm and never fought with anyone. He hid in the Eastern Palace every day to walk the birds and play with the dogs, living a more carefree life than anyone else. Chapter 4001. She really couldn't figure out what was going on. She kept feeling that His Highness the Crown Prince, wrongly, seemed to have suddenly changed his personality. He didn't even fight with the second prince and third prince recently. It seemed like he was cultivating his character. Wasn't this a joke? Your Highness. A black figure flitted across the sky and landed beside Ing. Ing immediately bowed respectfully in greeting. This was the captain of their hidden guards, Yi. He was the leader of the entire hidden guards, and he was also the one who usually dispatched all the hidden guards outside. Now that he suddenly appeared here, he must have something urgent to report to His Highness. Ing retreated a few more steps and sent a look to Yuan Zhen and Xiao Kezi, telling them to retreat as well. The leader of the hidden guards, Yi, took 2 steps forward and whispered to Duan Yu. Her Majesty the Empress sent a group of hidden guards to investigate the movements of the people around you. We have also been targeted. Duan Yu's lips turned up in a sneer. Then let them investigate. In any case, none of the people around him had moved recently, so what clues could they find? The ones who made the move were all the men that Prince Emo arranged in secret. But speaking of which, this punk he actually left so many hidden guards in Phoenix Emperor City. He was truly wicked immoral. These hidden guards were originally left in case of an emergency. They were most likely used to deal with his emperor father, Rong Yuan. To think that Prince Emo actually had such great patience. Who knew how many years he had been plotting? So the number of men he left in Phoenix Emperor City was really quite a lot. Duan Yu couldn't help but shake his head at this thought. Whoever made an enemy out of Emo Lien would truly have 8 lifetimes of bad luck, because this guy was too black-hearted and too scary. If you accidentally offended him, who knew how many traps he would set around you, just waiting for you to foolishly walk right into his trap. It was indeed time to meet that old woman. Duan Yu's lips curled up in a cold smile. That afternoon, all the aristocratic families and officials in Song Prefecture's Phoenix Emperor City received the news His Highness Prince Chun had returned to the palace. My Chiao's section break. When Emo Lien pushed open the door and entered, she saw her wife drooping on the bed with her eyes half closed. Who knew what she was thinking about? From the looks of it, it was as if he had fallen asleep in the middle of his cultivation and was hanging by the side of the bed. Was that what he was thinking? Although his little wife's cultivation was impermanent, she probably wouldn't do such a strange thing, right? His footsteps were light, but he suddenly stopped and looked at the little guy with a strange expression. At this moment, he was absolutely certain that his wife had fallen asleep. He could even hear the sound of her even breathing. This wasn't even a light sleep. He was half hanging by the side of the bed. In a strange position, he was sound asleep. Wife, you're really capable. She had never seen a cultivator fall asleep while cultivating. The corners of Emo Lien's mouth twitched. He quickened his steps and floated to his baby's side. He half squatted in front of her and looked at her sleeping expressionlessly with her head lowered. Pooh. Emo Lien turned his head and glared at the guy who laughed at his wife. Zhichun blinked and poured himself a cup of cold tea. As he drank, he shook his head and said, "This is this noble one's first time seeing someone fall asleep while cultivating in seclusion." "What do you know?" Emo Lien reflexively retorted. "Look at my Jojo, even though he's asleep." Chapter 4002. But the divine power surrounding her is still absorbing the divine power of heaven and earth. Don't you see the divine power surrounding her? It was only at this point that Emo Lien suddenly realized what he had said, and he immediately lowered his head to size up his wife again. Ma Shurchen also stopped laughing and carefully looked at his Joe from head to toe. Then he exclaimed, You're right. She really is. Holy shit. Judging from the level of divine power in his body, Charles' cultivation speed in his sleep was actually not much slower than his normal cultivation speed. In fact, it could even be said that it was even faster than his normal cultivation speed. Wuxia did not even notice when the teacup in his hand rolled onto the table, and the tea spilled all over the table. He only looked at his Jojo carefully, as if he was looking at a god. His mouth opened and closed several times, but he could not say anything normal. She was too freaking weird, okay? Cultivation required one to use one's own divine consciousness to communicate with the divine power of heaven and earth and absorb it. Who else could continue to absorb divine power, as if their body was breathing freely after they fell asleep? I've never seen Jojo being so amazing before. Emolian explained expressionlessly. I'm afraid it's a new skill that was unlocked after she advanced to the godly state. Wuxia looked at him silently, and suddenly felt that Emolian's words made a lot of sense. For a moment, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal did not know how to answer or refute. He just stood there in a daze. Xiaomu yawned and opened her confused eyes. She raised her small head slightly, and when she saw the Crown Prince's strange expression, she reflexively flicked her eyebrows. Why did you come back so early today? She suddenly realized that she was hanging by the bed, and her little face stiffened. Then, she immediately straightened her posture and continued to sit cross-legged. Only then did she realize that besides Emolian, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal was also sitting at the table and looking at her with a confused expression. Both of their expressions were a little weird. The little fellow muttered in her heart. She put on a serious face and said to the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal who was looking at her, "What are you doing? Don't disturb my cultivation." If the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal had tea in his mouth, he would have choked on it. Fortunately, he had the foresight and could not help but laugh strangely. Jojo, your cultivation method is quite unique. Emolian pursed her lips and poked her little head with her finger. She coughed softly and said, "Baby, you fell asleep just now." Sir Jojo glanced at him and quickly denied it. Impossible. What kind of joke was this? How could she, Master Jojo, fall asleep while cultivating? If word got out, wouldn't it make people laugh their heads off? Emolian and Ma Shurchin looked at each other and exchanged a helpless look at the same time. See, this is the little fellow's usual style beat, a duck die. Won't admit to it. Emolian raised her hand and patted her on the head. Jojo, we just realized that you can automatically draw in the god power of heaven and earth after you fall asleep and absorb it endlessly into your body. Sir Jojo looked up at her husband. Speak human language. You're still cultivating after you fall asleep. Looking at the two men who spoke in unison, Arbor laughed at them expressionlessly. Then he jumped off the bed and walked out. I'm cultivating. He did not sleep. Chapter 4003. Outside the door, they could still hear the two people's unbridled and bold laughter. Sir Jojo turned to glare at the door, then snorted and turned to walk towards the small kitchen. Since he had nothing to do, Sir Jojo cooked a sumptuous lunch for them. When the head chefs and junior royal maids who were busy in the small kitchen saw that the young Crown Prince Consort had come over from afar, their faces immediately showed very interesting expressions. Why is the Crown Princess coming towards the small kitchen? The Crown Princess couldn't be thinking of personally cooking something for the Crown Prince again, right? Don't dear, the last time you personally cooked a bowl of black soup, they couldn't bear to look at it. But His Highness actually really drank it. The moment the little Crown Princess walked into the small kitchen, she immediately found that the surrounding sounds had disappeared. Even the sound of the chefs chopping vegetables had disappeared. She expressionlessly dug around in her inner world and took out a lot of ingredients: clear stream spirit bamboo shoots, colorful divine fish, and various kinds of poultry that had been bred in Paradise Planet for a long time. In a moment, the entire quiet kitchen was completely filled with the sound of chickens flying and ducks jumping. When Kai Xiu received the news, she hastily rushed over and put on a colorful smile. She couldn't help but console her in a soft voice. Crown Prince Consort, let's leave the ingredients here and let head chef Wang and the others cook. Yes, Crown Princess can just tell us what she wants to eat. No matter if it's steamed, boiled, fried, anything is fine. Everyone in the small kitchen nodded in unison. I beg you, little Crown Princess, Don't waste our poor crown prince anymore. Looking at his highness' pitiful appearance, they all felt their hearts ache. Xiao Mu expressionlessly glanced at them. As she followed Saishio outside, she asked coldly, "Do they dislike me?" "No. Absolutely not." Kaishio's little face was about to stiffen from smiling. Turning her head, she sincerely blinked at the crown princess. "They are all afraid that the crown princess is too tired." "Umph. Don't think that this crown princess is stupid and can't see the fear in their eyes. The crown princess was not an assassin, so why were they so afraid of her? I heard that virtuous women have to wash their hands and cook for their husbands." The corner of Kaishio's mouth twitched. She quickly smiled and said, "Crown princess, you are already virtuous enough. Besides, didn't we already make soup last time?" Everyone in the small kitchen didn't want to recall the process of making soup. What a pity for their peerless and elegant crown prince. In the face of the bowl of special soup that his wife had brought over, he was actually able to drink it without any change in expression or heart rate, as expected of the crown prince, who would remain calm, even if Mt. Tai collapsed in front of him. They were the strongest warriors of the divine land. He was their future king at that time. The jaws of all the eunuchs and palace maids inside and outside the small kitchen had probably dropped to the ground when head chef Wang and the rest saw the little crown princess in the future. They would all have a trace of psychological trauma. Arbor touched his fingers embarrassedly. "Isn't that a failure?" She wasn't a fool. How could she not know that that black bowl of soup was a failure? How could there be a Lingji nourishing soup that turned into a black sesame seed? It must be that the recipe was wrong. She wasn't a chef in the past. Without training, how could she make a good soup? Chapter 4004. The corners of Kaishio's mouth twitched. With great difficulty and a strange expression, she tried her best to dispel her little master's strange idea. "Crown Prince Consort, the Lingji mushroom soup we made last time was definitely very effective. Although it doesn't look good on the surface, it's actually very effective." That bowl of Lingji soup made His Royal Highness so hungry that he didn't want to eat for 3 days. She felt that His Royal Highness was incomparably unlucky. His Royal Highness can't eat such good soup often. Didn't you hear the old saying, "It's too weak to make up for it"? Crown Prince is weak? Arbor looked stunned. "Fda, no, it's too weak to make up for it, right?" Kaishio tried her best to make up for the meaning in her words. Seeing the little crown princess frowning, she suddenly forced herself to change the topic. By the way, I heard that the city is very lively tonight. It's said that the biggest spring house in the city is going to hold a spring party tonight." Kaishio couldn't help but cry silently after she finished speaking. Why did he have to rub his nose in it? His Royal Highness seemed to have warned them before that they were not allowed to mention the word spring house in front of the little crown princess. Sure enough, when the little crown princess heard this, her eyes couldn't help but light up slightly. "That idiot Mudongni also mentioned it yesterday." Kaishio silently shed tears and forced a smile. "Actually, there's nothing to see. It's just a few gorgeously dressed men dancing and singing songs or something like that." The little palace maids passing by were speechless. Sister Kaishio's words aroused the little crown princess' curiosity. "Okay? By the way, crown princess, aren't you going to cultivate? I won't delay you. This servant will send you back to your room." Arbor nodded expressionlessly and suddenly asked, "Did you come to my room in the afternoon?" "I did. What was I doing?" "You were cultivating." Kaishio's mouth twitched and suddenly said loudly, "You were very serious." Arbor nodded and continued to walk forward expressionlessly with a pair of small hands behind her back. That's right. How could she cultivate until she fell asleep? She had always been cultivating seriously. Not long after dinner, the crown prince was urgently summoned to the study by the emperor. The little crown princess had nothing to do, so she sat on a small table and flipped through a book. Suddenly, she tossed the book aside and rolled her eyes. She ran to the cupboard at the side of the bedroom and rummaged through it to find a set of royal blue clothes. She put it on and tried it on. It fit her small body perfectly. This should be Emolienne's clothes from when she was young. She tucked the sleeves inside, and it would fit her just right. After changing her clothes, The little fellow tied her hair into a ponytail and found a small jade crown to fix her hair. Then he slipped out of the Eastern Palace like a wisp of smoke. Before doing all this, the little guy still had a guilty conscience and secretly blocked the star field. However, as soon as she moved, the shadows of several hidden guards followed her. After Sir Jojo left the Eastern Palace, he summoned the heavenly horsetail feather and jumped on it to stroll out of the palace. Emolien was still in the Emperor's study, discussing the zombie outbreak in the outskirts of Li City with him. Suddenly, he received a distress message from Aoyi. "Save me, Your Highness, the crown princess ran away." That bastard fool. Emolien's mouth twitched. He elegantly closed the file with one hand and waved at his imperial father. "My wife asked me to go back. We'll talk again tomorrow morning." You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.